In in the sort of non-STEM areas, my department, philosophy, does very well. We get something like 160 applications for 5 or 6 spots. The English department this year has really demonstrated not just the ability to bring in good students, but very diverse good students as well. So and more. I hesitate to. I don't want to leave anyone out. But one of the ways to tell is how big a reach their application pools have. I mean, what are the big ones? Where are they drawing people from? And these are some departments that are good examples of departments that we've invested in, and those investments paid off.
And so, just to follow up, is what's bringing these applications, this large number, the high demand, is there something specific about these departments that stands out?
Graduate PhD recruitment doesn't work like undergraduate recruitment. There's, you don't mail things to people and so forth. It all happens as on the basis of people knowing research, right? So the reason we're very visible in psychology, for example, is we have really prominent scholars. And so people all over the world are reading their work, and when someone says, hey, I'm looking to go to a graduate school, their faculty will say, I've been reading people, and they're at the University of Oregon, you ought to look there. And so it's a really kind of word of mouth connected really directly to research. Our prominent people lead us to get really good application pools and bring in the best students.
Well, this seems to be one of the untold stories of the University of Oregon, and it would be, hopefully we can tell that story more in the future.
Yes.
One thing I also want to say that Scott has innovated in with regard to the 60 additional positions is that he adopted a metrics-driven allocation approach, which is, I think, a culturally different way of doing it here. So it wasn't like everybody got a certain number more students. It wasn't that you got what you got last year and it was in the same proportion to that. It was, we're going to look at you, each of the departments, and we're going to say, are you performing well? Are you graduating the students? Are they getting jobs? Is this a strong department? And the resources followed that. So it creates this incentive system to get better and better and better. And I think that's really important, and I appreciated that in how you did it.
Fascinating, the competition between and among states in terms of funding is really an interesting case. California's got struggles. Washington has been squeezing the University of Washington drastically on funding, but the Washington legislature decided that they would fund building a new medical school in association with Washington State University. That's a $45 million a year commitment in Spokane. Now that came out of a state that I think, Connie, you'd say they've sort of done what Oregon has done. But someplace they found this commitment, which is stunning, I think, because it'll be the second medical school in Spokane. I don't know how in the hell that's going to be justified, but they're going to do it. So we need to really be careful. We're squeezed on both sides here.
Yes.
And Arizona will wake up and, it's going to be tough.
Right. Absolutely.
Any other questions for Scott? Scott, thank you so much. You really gave us so much good information, and we are all very, very appreciative of everything you're doing. It's a huge part of this university, and I hate to say it, I don't think it gets enough credit. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, moving right along, President Schill, would you like to start, or should
I think we're going to start with,
tandem?
yeah, I think we're going to start, we have two things that we'd like to discuss, and the first part is Yvette Alexasenso, who is our Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. She is going to talk a little bit about our ideal plan, which is something that she has been working on for many years, and after a year we have finally finalized it, and she has worked really hard and run a process that has involved a multitude of actors here. And so I've asked that Yvette come in and talk a little bit about what the ideal plan is. You've heard about it before in various ways, what we anticipate it will do.
Thank you. Thank you, President Schill, and thank you very much, board members, for your support. About a year ago,
Sorry to interrupt. Can you bring your microphone a little closer? Trustee Chappa's on the phone, and so we just want to make sure he can hear everything.
Thank you so much, Angela. So to begin again and make sure he understood, thank you, President Schill, for this opportunity, and thank you for the board for all of your support and your participation in this process. About a year ago, I had the opportunity to talk with you about what it would take to make the university the very best place that it could be for faculty, staff, students, and our community partners, and made the argument, presented research to show that diversity, equity, and inclusion are very important to that equation, to that outcome. And so today I'm very happy to talk with you about the results of the work, the ideal framework, and the way in which we hope to use that as a way to leverage the excellence that already exists to be even more excellent in terms of our faculty, our students, and our staff. The ideal framework basically comprises 5 pillars. It uses the concepts of inclusion, diversity, evaluation, achievement, and leadership in an effort to facilitate success, not only in terms of providing resources, but also removing barriers. And when you look at this ideal framework, it is the result of years of work, not only that included sort of building a process, but listening to what was already there and what faculty, staff, and students and community members thought needed to be built. The framework is also the result of lots of data work and evaluation. So we brought in outside consultants to look. We also did listening tours around campus. And what you will see is basically a plan that really deals with the nuts and bolts of the university: policy, process, and sort of outcome-based. So we thought about where we wanted to be in each of the areas of excellence of the university and what it would take to reach that and work backwards. In terms of the implementation, or in terms of sort of priorities, what we see are 3 important things that are important. The first is faculty hiring and retention, and that's something that's consistent with the President's plan. The other is student access and success. And also included in all those is this idea of training, professional development, and climate. I will then also just conclude with saying that we can't do everything at this particular point. The plan is really aspirational, and the important aspect of that plan is really ensuring that it dovetails nicely with the strategic plan and other aspects of the university's plan, and making sure that all of those areas include equity and inclusion and diversity as part of moving forward.
So all of you have the final version of the ideal plan in your materials. One of the things that we anticipate is going to sit side by side with the strategic framework that we have on my website and in our minds, and we're going to use it as a touchstone. You know, as we make decisions, are we acting consistently with it? And then we'll look at it periodically to see, are we doing the things that it has suggested? Now, one of the important things that is in there, there's some things that we're going to immediately do, some things that we've done already, but one of the things that we are going to immediately do, or in the next year, is ask each of the deans to do diversity plans, where they think about what they're doing, what their goals are for the next year, how they're going to achieve those goals. And then in the reviews annually that the provost will undertake with respect to the deans, that will be part of the review. Did you adhere to your plan? Did you do what the things that you said you were going to do? If not, why not? And move it forward. So accountability sort of makes the circle whole. And we really hope to be making significant progress in this area over time. And you know, and it's related in part to some of the aspects of this are also related to some of the Black Student Task Force work. And I think I might now take this part of the presentation and then open up for questions. So all of you know, we've already talked about this, you've met with many of the students, that as with the rest of the country, we had a significant amount of activity and activism among our African American students. They set up something called the Black Student Task Force. They came up with a list of 13 demands, and we immediately got to work. We set up 13 working groups. Yvette did tremendous, unexpected, tremendous work on that, sort of managing each of these groups, getting each of these groups moving along. Each group had faculty, students, administrators to look at each demand. And what we ended up doing is, as you can see up on the slide, we have 6 initiatives, or 6 of the demands that we decided and we've communicated with everyone we're moving forward with immediately. One is the African American Opportunities Program. Basically, that's a recruitment program where we are adding staff, which is African American, to the enrollment management group. We are going to be doing events, trying to bring students to us who are African American, also have our staff go out to them to try to create a greater pipeline of students coming to us who are diverse and in particular African American. We already have a Latino Opportunities Program, and so this is an important way. We have to work doubly hard in our state, partly because in terms of our African American population, we just don't have the quantity that some other states have. So that means we have to work harder to get increased diversity in our class. Now, I do believe that, I don't see Roger here, but I do think in next year's entering class, we have a greater proportion of African Americans, but it's not, phenomenally greater, right? This is a process. It is very difficult. Every half a percentage point is hard won. And so that's going to be one of the things we're moving forward in. We're also going to be inviting 6 historically Black Greek letter organizations to the University of Oregon, and they're going to be part of our fraternity and sorority life. We also are going to set up a new academic residential community, which is going to be in the Living Learning Center. It is going to include 25 students, and it is going to be headed by Professor Sharice Cheney, who's in our Ethnic Studies department. And so we're very excited about that. That was something, because part of what we need to do here, and I don't need to go through it many times, we've already talked about it, is it's not just admit the students, but it's include them, make them feel part of the university, reduce the isolation that comes from being 2% of a big university. So these academic residential units create that sort of cohesion, and so we're excited about that. We're setting up student advisory boards for both in the multicultural student leadership team and also in the Division of Equity and Inclusion. We're also starting a new speaker series, which they had asked for, and we're very excited. One of the speakers, we've had 2 or 3 already lined up for next year. Some of these things we're doing in partnership. I think we've already told you that one of the speakers next year, I think February, is going to be Ta-Nehisi Coates. So that'll be exciting. And that is primarily a journalism event, but we're also going to be helping sponsor that from the president's office. And then the students also wanted more publicity of diversity data. And so we've created a new website which lives on our website. And so that will create that data. Now, 13 demands, 6 done or 6 on their way. So we have some additional work that needs to be done. So let me just mention some of the other things that we're working on. One is One of the things the students wanted was an African American cultural center. So we've had a task force that's been working on that. Jamie has been very active in that. What we've been doing is we have a working group which visited OSU, looked at what they do in their cultural center. Our campus planning department has gone around our school, looked at various possible locations for one of these. We have two models. One is a renovated space, another is a new space. We have land, we have sites, we're doing some strategic planning, some costing, and then we're going to be looking for philanthropy, because that is going to be a relatively big ticket item for us to do. And we're also looking at staffing, because you don't just put one of these up, you have to put somebody in there and have some programs. And so we're looking at some interesting ways to handle that. But that work is ongoing, and I expect sometime over the summer to have a much better handle on what we're doing in that case, and then go out to some of our alumni to seek funding for this. This is probably the most well, it's not the single most expensive, but it is the major capital requirement that we would do. Secondly, faculty hiring and retention. That is obviously something that we need to do. We need to increase the diversity of our faculty all across the board, our African American faculty in particular. Scott has been very active this year, and indeed we've made a number of hires this year, both African American hires as well as Latino hires, Asian hires. And so we have I think this year we probably have a more diverse group of new faculty coming to the school than we've had in recent years. And so we're pleased with that. But this is something, you hire people, you've got to retain them. In addition, what you need to do is get this into the culture of hiring. So it isn't just when the provost steps in and says, here's some extra money, but that the departments themselves are set up to hire. And so one of the things that we are working with is training search committees in implicit bias. We're thinking about a fellowship program which will prime the pump for hiring by bringing people in as sort of trainee faculty members or as fellowships, and then we can view them, see whether we want to make them permanent offers and the like. But that is part of what we need to do, and that's also tied to this diversity plan. Academic advising, one of the things that we want to do is, so the students said, well, we have very few academic advisors who are African American, and we would like to have some folks out there who look like us and who know and understand the sort of experiences we have. So we are going to be working with the schools as openings develop for advisors to try to encourage the various schools and units, as well as centrally, to hire academic advisors who are African American and diverse in other respects. And in addition, I don't know whether I'm allowed to say any, so we're going to have an announcement of, is it today?
No, I don't.
When are we making the announcement?
Apparently right
Okay.
now.
Right, apparently right now. We will be hiring, we have selected, and we'll be hiring a new AVP for student success, who will be someone that will make the students very happy, as well as me. The next, when the announcement comes, then the next thing that we're going to be working on is funding of scholarships and increasing scholarships. Now that's a big ticket item, and the committee that's been working on this has come up with some very large numbers, and we really need to work on that and make that part of the campaign that we're currently in. And Mike has been very involved in that. And I'm sorry, my voice is, I think I screamed too much yesterday.
You had a busy day yesterday. A lot of
I
talk.
used my voice more than usual yesterday. So that is going to be something that's going to be a very high priority for our school. We're going to have a permanent Black Student Task Force that's being worked out with the ASUO. And one of the other areas is, as many of you remember, the African American students asked that Ethnic Studies 101 be required for everyone. Everybody knew that was impossible at the time because it's one course. It's only taught in two sections. And so, you can't offer that for 21,000 students. So what we were thinking of doing is we're working to think about ways that we can both, one, increase the curricular offerings in Black Studies, but in addition, think about our multicultural requirement, and which has been watered down over the years. And then I think there's, 500, 600 courses? How many?
1,200.
1,200 courses that meet the multicultural requirement. And, the courses are, I'm not going to go pick on particular courses, but they're not all about what
Power and race.
we would think of as something that would help people understand multiculturalism in the United States, or certainly the particular history of African American people in this country. So we need to go back, work with the University Senate, work with the Undergraduate Council. Lisa is working very hard on that, making good progress. It's not easy, but making good progress, so that's another thing. The last thing is the building denaming issue. So as you know, since our last meeting, a number of schools have actually brought their processes of naming or denaming to culmination. Princeton decided to keep Woodrow Wilson's name on the Woodrow Wilson School and Wilson College. Yale decided to keep Calhoun's name on Calhoun College. We have not made a decision with regard to our students who have asked us to rename Deedy Hall and Dunn Hall. So what we have done, and we've communicated with the campus community, is a set of criteria that we would like to use, that we want to use in terms of thinking about how we go about the decision to dename a building. And the process that we are putting into place is we're going to, over the next week or two, engage 3 historians to look at the issue. They will not recommend a denaming of either building, but they will look to the historic record, answer a series of questions that I've asked them, which go to issues like, did the person commit violence or argue in favor of violence? Did the person act in such a way as to, not uphold the sort of ideals that we have for a university, taking into account both the mores of the time, and also taking into account possible redemption, things that they did later in their career. So we really need to have that historical record. Then the process will come back to me, and I will read what they found, weigh the criteria, decide on my recommendation. My understanding is, and obviously this is something that we can all talk about, but my inclination is that I will then make a recommendation to the board if I feel that a denaming is justified in either of these 2 buildings. You have the ultimate authority. If I don't, I may not make a recommendation, and then obviously you can take it up on your own, but that will be it may just end at that point that I don't make a recommendation if that's the case. In either of these cases, what we would do is we would go forth with a set of affirmative measures, which would include both, so let's say, for example, there were a building that had a history that was somewhat of someone who had, a history that wasn't entirely meritorious on some of these issues. We would explain that, use it as a learning opportunity, put appropriate signification within the buildings to discuss that. In addition, we will think about, as we go forward with naming additional sites on campus and putting up additional statues, icons, that to make this place a more inclusive university that reflects all of the diversity of the students here, the faculty here, and the community at large. So that's sort of a very short summary of a lot of work that a lot of people have done, and happy to take questions. Yvette's happy to take questions on both of these issues.
Can we jump back to the Black Student Task Force recommendations? Have we been, I understand that many of the members have been involved in the committees working on the request, but have we been getting feedback and response to the progress we are making from the Black Student Task Force? And if so, what is that feedback?
We have been in consistent communication with the Black Student Task Force. The president has met with them on a number of occasions, and I keep in contact with them as well. They are students, and so they have critiques of the process, but I think that overall they are very happy about the fact that we were prompt in our responsiveness, that the president has been very transparent in helping them to understand what can and cannot be done. They are students, so many of them have tried to attend as many of the working group sessions as possible, and many of them have been very fastidious about their involvement in doing background research. I think that with the remaining and outlying recommendations that are still to be processed, we are working with them to make sure that they understand timeline and the various complications that are coming up. And what we understand is that because we've been in conversation with them, that they are willing to work with us to move the process forward. We haven't received a lot of resistance, and I think it's been because of the president's responsiveness and their involvement at a very early stage. What will happen in the end is yet to be determined, but I do anticipate a good outcome overall. Overall, they are happy with all of those things.
I think perhaps it needs to be said that this may well be the most responsive that this university has ever been to demands for inclusion, and especially in this regard. And I can't say enough how much I applaud the work that you have done in leading this, and the work of the committees in trying to figure out some solutions. I'm really impressed with this list that you've begun. It seems to me that some of the items on this list of recommendations will be transformative for beyond our lifetimes. And I think for this university to rise into a truly national, internationally competitive place of learning, I think it's really important that you've made these steps. And so I think you've done something significant for the future of the university. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And again, this is one where it's a village. There's dozens and dozens of people who are working in various groups on this. So I'm very grateful to all of them, and especially to Yvette.
Good work, and I hope you continue to keep this committee and the board in general updated on the progress that's being made, because it's important for us to relay that out to our communities as well, and just very much appreciate it. Any other questions? And
I was just wondering, again, I wanted to commend all parties involved for the tremendous amount of work that's been done over the last year. I think it's really positive. It sounds like we've gotten a real, it seems like we're putting together a real true foundation of how to move forward to the future. I was wondering if there's an opportunity for us. I thought the breakfast that we had, I don't know, 2 meetings ago with the actual students was really helpful to everybody on the board. And since so much work has been accomplished since that point, I'm wondering if maybe at one of our next board meetings, if we can touch base with the students, because it's always nice to hear from them, you know, what they've seen, to be able to also have all the work that you've done reaffirmed, and then, you know, just give us a touching point on, you know, the work that still needs to be done. I think that was really helpful last time, and it could be helpful to everybody at the board towards the future as well.
I'd like to second that and just reiterate that unlike any other campus that I saw, the way those students approached us was so nice. What a stupid word. But I mean, it was so mature the way they brought that information forward, and I thought exactly the way to do it.
Impressive.
Well, I also think that the students appreciated your input and your concern about their issues. And I think that as much as you can continue to display that kind of concern about and for diversity issues, the more success that you will see on campus, not only with students, but with faculty and community as well. So it's your leadership that counts as well.
And thank you for organizing.
Really important because, and that was the point of my question, I really would like to hear that we are making the kind of progress that is important to the students who are making the requests. Just like, so
Anything else in your committee?
anything else? No, not at all.
Just one additional comment. I think, again, great progress. And I think interesting that you assigned deans the duty of coming back with plans for their respective schools, which is excellent. I hope this board tracks the metrics. You know, we haven't moved the dial in decades at this university, and the rubber hits the road, so to speak, when we move that, and I hope we track it as a board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's nothing further, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the committee meeting.
Okay, so moved. So moved. Seconded.
Okay.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Okay. I think
Bye, Rudy. Bye. Yeah, so can we, so for the trustees, your lunch is available in room 403, the standard room.
Trustees, we had committee meetings this morning. Is that better? Okay. The secretary turned my, it's tricky working on this. So let's start with a roll call if we can. Angela?
Yeah, Connie Ballmer. Here. Peter Braga. Here. Rudy Chapa. He will be joining us by phone in a little bit. Andrew Curry.
Here.
Alan Ford.
Here.
Susan Gary. Here. Joe Gagne.
Here.
Ross Carey.
Here.
Chair Lillis.
Here.
Will Hostian.
Here.
Vice Chair Ralph. Here. President Schill.
Here.
Mary Wilcox. Here. Kurt Wilcox.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We have a busy meeting scheduled this afternoon, and we'll get started in just a moment. We have most of the work done in the committees will come to the board this afternoon as seconded motions, and we'll deal with those. I would ask that the committee chairs in each case not give a full report because we're kind of constricted, but a quick, but 2 or 3 sentences on what we covered, and that would be helpful. And we will have the reports from the University Senate and the Associated Students, and I think I saw both. Well, at least I saw Helena. Should I go? Yeah, okay. And we will have a report from President Schill. 2 primary pieces of information this afternoon that we're dealing with. One is from the University of Oregon Foundation, an overview. The foundation, as I think all of you know, is critically important to the success of the university, and Paul Weinhold will be here, and he will discuss a variety of issues relative to the foundation. And then we're going to have a discussion on the clusters of excellence and where we are in those, and I think that'll be very helpful. In our 2 years as a board, we have been dealing with those at almost every meeting, and some of them are funded and some are rolling and some have been faculty have been hired, and so we will hear from Scott Coltrane, I think, principally in that regard. Okay, let's first, we have minutes from the March 2016 meeting to approve. Do I have a motion for approval of those?
So moved.
Is there a second? Are there any adjustments or comments or questions, or if not, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, we have a public comment session. I'd just like to remind all of us that we try to make each commenter spend about 3 minutes. I'm never good at being a disciplinarian about this, so it's easy to take advantage of that. But it's really helpful for us to stay on schedule if we can be close to that time. We have people sign up to comment on really on 3 areas. We have several people want to speak to the issue of divestment or environmental responsibility, and some want to speak relative to the renaming of buildings on the campus, D.D. Hall being one of those. And Mike is here, Dreiling, who would like to speak, Professor Dreiling, who would like to make some remarks relative to investments in faculty and liberal arts mission of the university. So I'd like to just cluster these together if we can. And I think Michael Dreiling, if we could start with you, that would be good. But I don't see Michael. Oh, here, okay. And we know you, but please introduce yourself, will you, Mike?
And please do sit and use the microphone. We have a tech joining by phone, so you can, of course, hear.
Thank you. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for this time. This is it's great to be here just a day after President Schill's investiture. That was really a great honor to see and participate in that event. So, and for many of you there, it was great. I'm Michael Dreiling, as some of you know. I'm also a professor in sociology and also the president of United Academics. I'm here to, I think, speak to a couple things. I mean, as trustees, I mean, you have such a heavy responsibility in terms of guiding our institution, not just, of course, in the year or 2, 3 ahead, but really for the generation ahead. And I was recently looking through the E&G financial budgets for fiscal year 17, and I think the numbers in terms of salary and benefits for all staff, faculty included, are a positive direction. I think that those numbers, which are a point above inflation, a point and a half above inflation, are a good indication that we're on a path that is investing in the staff, of whom are the kind of backbone of the university, who, of course, are the major asset of the university, and who make this place really work. And so that kind of positive movement forward in compensation, as well as expansion of staff and faculty, is the right direction. I just wanted to applaud that. I wanted to speak to what I think and I hope is a continued investment in the core resources and assets of this institution, which are the staff, the faculty, and the OAs, who make sure that what our students are receiving is the best education, best research opportunities, and best avenues to participate in that research as graduate students and undergraduates in the years ahead. So I hope that projection is able to be sustained for many years. I did also want to speak to, and I'm just doing this out of sympathy for the cause. I have colleagues here at the University of Oregon. I think everybody knows that the University of Oregon has an incredible array of faculty who are addressing questions of climate change, the risks of climate change, the issues, litigation around climate change risks. Mary Wood over in the law school, for example, has led a very inspiring initiatives there. The science behind climate change, right? We have cutting-edge scientists in physics, in geology, and geography, in chemistry, who do research really on the actual science of climate change, its implications. And we also have sociologists, geographers, anthropologists, who look at the social implications and risks and dislocations associated with climate change projections. And in all of these, and in other fields that I haven't done justice to really capture, one of the fundamental things that I think our students who attend this university walk away with is an understanding that this is a serious problem. When 11 of the last 12 months are the hottest months on record over a 140-year period since we began measuring it. When NASA's latest science data, it's just very clear that this is driven by increased CO2 in the atmosphere. The divestment movement is an effort to say, this is serious. We need to pay attention, not just for the immediate politics of the situation, but for the welfare of future generations that will inherit this institution. And I think what the students have done here is take that educational opportunity, have honored the science that they've been exposed to. I mean, some of the students that are active in the U of O divestment campaign are science majors in biology and so forth, and really said, how can we begin to not just reduce our individual footprint, but to really make a difference institutionally? I'll wrap it up with that, I understand. And how do you do that? Where can you have voice? And so they're not just students who are getting a lesson in physics and chemistry and biology and sociology and geology. They're getting a lesson in civic life, civic participation, in how to make a difference in the world that they will inevitably inhabit. And so I really want to honor their effort, their voice, and their desire to present to you their concern about the way this institution can walk its talk. And I think that's what you're going to hear in a little bit, but I wanted to speak to that too out of a deep sympathy for the cause. So thank you very much, and have a great afternoon, everybody.
So I think we'll, thank you, Mark. Let's start with this. It looks like they're all students who signed up to talk about divestment, so I'll try to just go in the order in which you signed up, but let's start with Matt Stevens. And please tell us where you are as a student, Matt. What year and what major? And
for sure. My name is Matt Stevens. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a sophomore in the Clark Honors College here at the University of Oregon. First, I'm an environmental studies and a geography minor. So first, I would like to thank the board for their time considering this important issue. We appreciate your concern, and we genuinely appreciate your willingness to listen to our voices. And one of the arguments that our group has constantly been presented with from both the UL Foundation and President Schill himself is that taking a stance on issues such as divestment opens up a slippery political slope and opens up other groups who can then ask, hey, you need to take a stance on this issue that are more political in nature. And while I appreciate the concern in preserving neutrality, in all fairness, this is not a political issue. This is a safety issue, and this is a human rights issue. As you all know, there is a scientific consensus that climate change is real, that it is happening now, and that its effects are already apparent. In 2007, the Supreme Court ruled in Massachusetts versus the Environmental Protection Agency that carbon emissions have a big effect on overall human health. And already across the nation, we are seeing higher rates of childhood asthma, and especially in underrepresented and marginalized communities. Additionally, record droughts in California, massive wildfires throughout the Pacific Northwest, and a dwindling snowpack in the Cascade Mountains are all indicative of effects of climate change. So, if this is not a political statement, then it is a safety issue and a human rights issue, and the university must fulfill its mission to provide a safe and nurturing academic environment to all students and to all future students. So how can the university fulfill its mission to provide a safe and nurturing academic environment when the millions of dollars the foundation has invested in the fossil fuel industry are directly contributing to the proven adverse effects of human health? How can the university fulfill its mission to provide a safe and nurturing academic environment when the millions of dollars the foundation has invested in the fossil fuel industry endangers the overall well-being of the entire state and all of its citizens? How can the university fulfill its mission to provide a safe and nurturing academic environment when millions of dollars the foundation has invested in the fossil fuel industry has an inordinate impact on communities of color who make up a vital part of this campus? This is not a political issue. Divesting from fossil fuels is a measured step that the university can take to protect future students, future faculty, and to foster an even better academic environment for all. There's a significant movement across the United States and the rest of the world in support of institutional divestment, and as you all may remember, in the 1980s there was a similar movement to divest all assets from South Africa and the brutal, systematic apartheid implemented there. Here at the UO, a group of activists not so different from all of us urged the university to break ties with South Africa, ending their relationship with the country until it abolished apartheid. Similarly, the UO chose not to take a political stance and face significant negative media attention and a tarnished reputation. We do not have to repeat our mistakes of the past. For the sake of our generation, for the sake of future students, and the global community as a whole, please sell your investments in fossil fuels, urge the foundation to sell their investment in fossil fuels, and don't take a political step, but rather take a necessary step to protect and preserve our campus community and the learning environment for all of our students. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for your thoughtful comments, Matt. And next is, I'll apologize, is it Kaya Hazard? Is that how you pronounce that? Kaya. Well, I apologized, Kaya.
Hi, my name's Kaya Hazard. Again, I just wanted to reiterate what Matt said. Thank you so much for your time and your openness to hearing what we have to say. So I'm a graduating senior. I'm an environmental studies major, Spanish minor. And I just kind of wanted to explain how we got to this point and how we've really grown our campaign over the last few years. I have been one of the campaign coordinators of the Divest campaign for the past 2 years. So when this campaign started before me, it was really just two guys who basically went to the foundation and were told, no one cares about this issue. Come back when and if you've found support. And that's exactly what they did. So in the spring of 2014, the ASUO passed a ballot resolution in which 73% of students voted in support of divestment, and that was basically when divestment was unknown. That wasn't a common thing that you heard on campus like it is now. And then in winter 2015, almost 18 months to the day ago, the University Senate passed a unanimous resolution calling on the foundation to agree to divestment within 6 months and to become fully divested within 5 years. Again, there was no response from the foundation, even with a unanimous vote. So then this year, as you may have seen on the news or read about in the paper, a group of us sat inside Johnson Hall for 10 weeks with nearly 30 of us on the first day. And we were endorsed by Naomi Klein, a leading expert in the field. Yet we received basically no statement from the administration until they grew fed up with us and went through scheduling and campus ops in order to remove us and our sign. So after multiple unsuccessful meetings with a representative from the foundation, in which we were told not to say the word divest, and after unsuccessful meetings with the administration, we gathered nearly 1,000 petition signatures in just the past few weeks from fellow students. It was a student-centric petition, and all of these students are urging you, the university, and the foundation to take a stance against fossil fuel companies, stand with students, and really take this step with us to secure our right to a habitable future, both us and the generations that could come after us. So again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Joey, are you?
Hi, my name is Josiah Ng. I'm a sophomore at the University of Oregon, and as part of Climate Justice League, I work on the Divest UO campaign. Today, I'd just like for us to recognize that there are over 500 institutions that have committed to partial or full divestment, and these include pension funds, health-related institutions, they're faith-based groups, there's a few for-profit corporations, there's government organizations locally, such as the City of Portland, the City of Eugene, which are both committed to full divestment. And suppose most pertinent to this discussion, there are foundations which make up 120 of the total 500, and there's colleges, universities, and schools which make up about 70. And a lot of these consist of smaller private schools, but I'd just like to talk about one school today that seems particularly relevant, and that is the University of Massachusetts, which as of last week pledged to build on its divestment from coal last year and sell all its direct investments in fossil fuels, making it the first public university committed to full divestment. And this is a university that enrolls, like University of Oregon, over 20,000 students, whose foundation's endowment is valued at $770 million, less than the endowment here, and a university where student activists mobilized their student body to show their collective support. They fought for their president and board of trustees to take a position on divestment, and this is all while being a major public university in the New England area. So I don't want to be ridiculous implying that University of Oregon satisfies the same set of conditions as Massachusetts, that it could just commit to divestment in a heartbeat. But I think with more schools that are divesting, Massachusetts in particular, it breathes a new life into the issue and the prospect of divestment. And also, I just think we as a community need to take the matter more seriously, like Matt was saying, and establish positions on the issue. Students have taken positions through the petition, through a ballot measure 2 years ago. The University of Senate has unanimously supported divestment. The President Schill, you've taken a position, and even though it's not in support of divestment, it's a position. And as the next step, I think as students, we're asking for the Board of Trustees to take a formal position, and the least it can do is vote on a resolution for divestment. So that's what we recommend. Thank you.
Thank you. What's your major, Greg?
I majored in mathematics at the beginning of this year, and I'm thinking about changing to English.
Well, that's a good combination, too, isn't it? Okay. Is it Sahali? Yes. Is that close?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, great.
All right.
Sahali McFarland.
Yes, my name is Sahali McFarland. I'm a sophomore at the University of Oregon. I'm studying anthropology, and I've been involved in the Divest campaign for a few terms now. I'm here to tell you all about an organization that the university recently joined to help make divestment happen. It's called the Multi-School Fossil-Free Divestment Fund, and I'm a representative for the University of Oregon. And it's a compilation of 30 schools that are trying to get their respective universities to divest from fossil fuels. Basically, the fund is an alternative pool of money that alumni, students, faculty, and large donors can donate to instead of the university foundation if they don't want their money going into an institution supporting fossil fuel industries. So over time, the fund grows, and by December of 2017, two things can happen. If the university has committed to divestment by this point, it receives all the money collected in the fund, as well as the money from the funds of other universities that do not divest. If the university does not commit to divestment by December of 2017, it loses the chance to collect the money of donor and alumni donations, and that money instead is equally dispersed to universities that have pledged for divestment. The University of Oregon Divest UO campaign has already begun collecting money from faculty and alumni of the U of O, and the fund will only continue to grow. The University of Oregon should view this as a great opportunity to be a leading school in divestment, especially considering we would not just receive the money from our own respective fund, but also the collections of possibly multiple other institutions. However, if the university continues to view divestment as not an option, the money of large donors and influential alumni will instead go to a completely different university. Those investing their money into the divestment fund are making a statement. They're demonstrating that their love and pride in their respective alma maters and places of work go hand in hand with a moral obligation to do whatever they can do to take a stand against the destruction of the earth. This fund provides an alternative resource for individuals that want to support their universities but do not want to support the fossil fuel corporations hiding in their shadows. I will continue to work as hard as I can in proving to these individuals that our university can be as green as they say it is and can uphold the highest ethical integrity through refusing to support such destructive fossil fuel institutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Jung? Eric's here? Okay.
Hello. All right. Hi, my name is Eric Young. I'm a senior here at the U of O, set to graduate in a week, studying environmental science and biology with a political science minor. So I just kind of wanted to talk about kind of the balance between, this financial cost that divestment would pose to the foundation and then the university, countered with the, the benefits of divestment in terms of improving the university's image and, also doing the right thing. So in terms of the costs of divestment, when we met with the foundation, we were told by the CIO that approximately 0.5% of the endowment, which would equate to about $4 million of the 750 is invested in fossil fuel companies. Unfortunately, this number is all hearsay because the foundation is not, doesn't show us what they actually have. They're very in the dark with that. But even if this was the case, this is a relatively small amount of their total portfolio, but it's still, $4 million is still a substantial amount of money. But beyond that, the purpose of divestment is the principle of, getting rid of investments that are, destroying the world. So in this case, or in the case of apartheid, even though, I don't know if people know the history, but the university was invested, right through the 80s. There was big protests on campus. Dozens of other universities, maybe even hundreds within the United States, went on to divest. The U of O didn't. And, that that left a pretty big stain on the university's record, and I think justifiably so, because in hindsight, profit maximization in the face of supporting oppressive, segregated governments is not a good thing, and I think that the university's position on that was kind of shameful. Similar with fossil fuel investments, we can see where the trajectory of the climate science, but also the social trends are going in terms of divestments of other universities. We've already had, I believe the number is 49 or so universities last time I checked a few weeks ago that have divested or partially divested, most of those within the United States. Hundreds of other institutions and cities, Eugene, churches, the Vatican, all kinds, the Rockefeller Foundation, to name one. So, if the Rockefeller Foundation is already divested, it's a little late for the U of O to be, a leader on this, but they could still be, towards the front of the pack with regards to fossil fuel divestments. And, even if, you just want to look at this as a pure, financial, how do we grow the university and better its image, I think the writing's on the wall. The first university only divested about 3 years ago. It was 2013, I believe. And like I said, dozens have joined since. And, in 5 or 10 years, as the world keeps getting hotter and sea levels continue to rise and climate change becomes a bigger and bigger issue, I think the university is going to find itself in the position of, where it was in, 1989 or 1990 or so, when, everyone else had done their part, but the U of O had just, been, lagging on the issue. So I think that, as a whole, if the U of O was to do this, it would, be beneficial, even if you're not concerned about climate change, which I think is a pretty scary proposition. And I strongly encourage the university to consider divesting. So.
Terrific. Thank you, Eric. And I can't quite tell from what was written on the sign-up sheet, but Paul Ward, are you here? This is either the same subject or a closely related subject. Yeah. Perfect. You're a graduate student?
I am.
In
My name is Paul Ward. I'm a graduate student in the Department of Architecture here at the university, and I'm actually speaking for a number of other graduate students who have similar views. Thank you for the opportunity to talk today. As we've already heard, it seems like a large portion of the UO community cares very deeply about this issue of climate responsibility and how the university is going to comport itself in this manner. I think, at least for the architecture department, many of us came here because the university has a reputation for being a leader in sustainability and in design in that regard. In 2011, the university adopted the Oregon Model for Sustainable Development, which set forth a series of guidelines for how we would build new buildings on campus. Specifically, it capped current campus energy use and committed to being climate neutral by 2050. If we want to make good on that pledge, though, we also have to look at how we maintain the existing buildings that we have. One of the opportunities I've had as a researcher here at the university is to work with a number of other scientists, engineers, members of the faculty and staff, and people from operations like maintenance and facilities. And the general consensus of all of these discussions and studies is that the university could save 10 to 20% on its current energy bills through pursuing a comprehensive recommissioning effort. This essentially would go into all of the existing buildings on campus and look at the systems and how they work, improving them where possible and correcting them where necessary. And we would then develop a plan to use those buildings more efficiently as occupants. The Department of Energy actually recently conducted a study. They surveyed something like 643 recommissioning projects in the United States. And the results they found were pretty clear. For recommissioning of existing projects, they found the median cost to be 30 cents per square foot, and the projects would save 16% of the building energy use. Additionally, the projects had a simple payback time of 1.1 years and a return on investment of 4.5 times over a course of 5 years. These projects were much more cost-effective for reducing carbon than offsets or buying carbon credit. And they also have a number of other harder-to-quantify benefits. They intend to lower maintenance costs for buildings and improve the longevity of buildings and the systems in them. They improve building performance, and which also helps occupants to be more productive and more comfortable as the air quality and lighting quality for their buildings are better. From the studies we've done, it seems like the university has both the desire and the expertise in the form of its staff, its faculty, and its students to really go after something like this. And pursuing such an effort would also have a number of other benefits for our institution. It would help the various elements that manage campus buildings cooperate better and address problems more effectively. It would help us respond to future changes in the energy market. And it would enhance university research agendas. We've already seen a lot of research being done in the natural sciences. The architecture department also has a long history of building performance research. And recently, the biology department was actually nationally recognized at a forum in Washington, D.C. for their work on analyzing how microbes grow and operate in the building environments. And a commitment was made to continue studying that throughout the year. So I think we have an opportunity to address this issue proactively, and in doing so, we can save energy and money now while enhancing and strengthening a number of the other university facets. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can you just tell us again the study you were referencing?
So I actually have part of it here. And if you're interested, I work at a lab on campus, and we've done some studies to support, and I have a summary of that I can pass out.
Is that one of the attachments we've already?
It is, yes.
Yeah, so we actually have 2 attachments from Paul that we're actually writing to an email right now.
The study itself was conducted by Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, and I believe completed in 2009. And they surveyed something like 643 recommissioning projects across 26 states at a variety of scales.
Okay, well, let's just make sure.
And I can pass the executive summary of that study to you as well.
Perfect.
And if you're interested, there are a lot of people to talk. Steve Meitel, the director of the Office of Sustainability, has been doing this for years. Tony Hardenbrook, the leader of the Central Power Station, is actually currently working on implementing this. And I know that my lab with Charlie Orgizi Brown and Kevin Van Den Moilenberg in the architecture department has got years of experience in this regard as well.
Terrific. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we're going to turn now to a different subject. I believe we've got all of the people that signed up for divestment conversation. So we're going to turn to the issue of renaming and the potential renaming of buildings in general and D.D. Hall in particular. And so let's start with Barton Lewis. And even though you're an alum and not a student, Barton, you still have to introduce yourself.
Okay, I will. My name is Bart Lewis. I went to the University of Oregon. I have a master's degree in history in 1967. And I worked for 29 years in the business office. I was a program assistant, first in general accounting and then in student billing. And I've been retired for 10 years. I got interested in the subject of renaming D.D. Hall as an Oregon alumnus. Anytime there's anything in the papers about Oregon, I tend to get defensive and wonder what's going on next. So I looked into it, and here are some of the ideas that I'd like to share with you. First and foremost, I want to emphasize that Matthew Deedy, who was born in 1824, was a product of his times. He was born in Ohio. His dad was an itinerant teacher, and the family moved and lived in places like Baltimore, Maryland, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Mississippi, eventually returning to Ohio. When he was 17 years old, he left home on his own to become an apprentice blacksmith. He had a meager education, became a school teacher, however, and learned to practice law from a judge who mentored him. When he came to Oregon on a wagon train, he brought with him the thinking of the Democratic Party. He was a member of the Democratic Party, and at that time had views on slavery and race that we would not accept today. but they were part and parcel of that party. Although he was a product of his time, he did possess the necessary attributes to educate himself and to mature as a human being, and was able to exceed his own early limitations. Like Matthew Deedy, I think I'm a product of my times, and I was raised in the 1940s, and the influence of World War II, the service of African Americans, Japanese Americans, the coming together as a country despite racial or religious differences, was very important in my upbringing. I also saw Jackie Robinson play baseball, and I was in school at the time of the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. That's the environment I grew up in. That's what shaped my ideals. Matthew Deedy did not have the advantages of that kind of an environment. At 29 years of age in Oregon, Matthew Deedy became a federal district judge. He wrote the Constitution in 1857 for Oregon when he was only 33 years old. When the subject of his early racism, and there was no question but that he was pro-slavery earlier, when that question came up years later, a good friend of his, Jesse Applegate, a well-known Oregon pioneer and, among other things, an anti-slavery figure in Oregon, Jesse Applegate defended him vigorously. It's important to note that Judge Deedy, as a federal judge in a far western state, used the federal power and the law to fight racism. He did this when defending Native American tribes against what he called white ruffians, and he did it in the famous Chinese cases, where he repeatedly, case after case, referred to racial prejudice. And these were times of the Exclusion Acts, and when people in Oregon were trying to remove Chinese immigrants from the factories in Oregon City and in the gold mines. His contemporaries noted that his degrees were based upon the laws of substantial morality and justice, to the disregard of the mere sophistries of the law. And his rulings were in favor of the principles of the law, one of which was that all persons have equal protection of the law. He was a stalwart defender of the 14th Amendment, and he saw it as a bulwark against local oppression and tyranny, and I'm quoting him, up north as well as down south. As far as, I'll conclude quickly because I did a little research on Villard Hall and thinking of the iconography of Oregon, and I loved your ideas this morning about what we can do with new iconography as we go forward. Henry Villard, who was a friend of Deedy's, they'd met in Portland where Deedy lived and where Villard had business interest. Henry Villard, his real name was Henrik Gustav Hilgard. He ran away from home against his parents' will when he was young, came to the United States, changed his name to Henry Villard so that he wouldn't be sent back to Europe. He had studied some law, and he became a financier, getting pools of money from German immigrants to buy up Western railroads. He was a mergers and acquisitions guy who defended Deedy throughout his life and supported the University of Oregon with substantial donations to bail out its debt and to set up an endowment. He gave $50,000 in Northern Pacific Railway stock for that. I think it's important to note that Henry Villard was a noted abolitionist, and his opposition to racism during Reconstruction is well documented. He was married to Helen Frances Garrison, who was the daughter of William Lloyd Garrison, the famous abolitionist who edited the Liberator magazine. And she, in her own right, was an abolitionist. She opposed racism, and she was an early advocate of women's suffrage. And it's interesting to me that we have Villard Hall sitting right there with that heritage right next to Deedy Hall. So I'm optimistic that we can live with both of those. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's, Scott? Mr. Bartlett is quite the researcher.
My old age. Yeah. Honorable Chairman Lillis and board members, Honorable President Schill, Honorable Provost Coltrane. My name is Scott Bartlett, and I've talked to you, thanks to your courtesy, 2 times about, I think, the wisdom in retaining the name of Dee Dee Hall. William Butler Yeats, the Irish poet playwright, said that education is not the filling of a pail, it's the lighting of a fire. And one thing I've observed in reading the diaries of Dee Dee is his inspiration for education. And I had this quote from this great, I tracked it down, the University of Minnesota, 1939. I called them up, and then they contacted the archivist, and in a box they finally searched is the only PhD dissertation on Dee Dee. And it is the ultimate, definitive, comprehensive book on warts and all, someone who really emerged to be one of the federal judiciary's foremost opponents of white mob racism. I think that should count for something, and I'd like the president of the U of O, if you'd like this, you could have a copy. I went down to FedEx and had a couple.
Thank you.
I was, so I was reading, and I was reading this PhD, and there was a quote. It said, "I shall never forget the first time I saw Mount Hood. It was in Indian summer, the last day of October. Beautiful, soft, and hazy weather. That night, it rained a little. The next day, the Blue Mountains were covered with snow. And I saw Mount Hood, the first snow mountain I ever saw. I never saw anything grander." That was Matthew Dee Dee, and it's no coincidence that the seal that he did of the U of O has Mount Hood in it, and he chose the motto, Mens Agitat Molem. I was trying to round up a few books on Oregon and U of O history, and I've tried to give as many around that I could. And I was talking to the young lady. I didn't know she was a U of O student, and while she was on the computer looking for this history of the U of O by Henry Sheldon, 1939, we got to talking, and I said, you know, Matthew Dee Dee had a pretty bad record on slavery, 1857. That was the same year that the Dred Scott decision came out, legalizing slavery. And what I didn't know, I told her, was that in 1860, when he went back to Washington, he was supposed to be en route to the Democratic Convention to back his mentor and sponsor, Joseph Lane, who was totally responsible for Dee Dee's being appointed to the Territorial Supreme Court in 1853 and then the U.S. District Court in 1859. But he didn't go there. He followed the debate, and he came back, according to Overmyer, radically transformed. By 1862, when African Americans couldn't find employment in Oregon, he hired as his right-hand employee a man named J.H. Butler, who was a devoted right-hand person and stayed there from 1862 to 1884. Thereafter hired another African American, James Fullalove. At that time, Dee Dee just kept on progressing as a federal judge backing underdogs. 1869, he was offered the presidency of the University of California informally. 1885, Leland Stanford appointed him to the Board of Regents of Stanford University. In 1886, of course, was his famous staring down of the riots against Chinese. In 1887, and there's a book called Massacred for Gold, Oregon, OSU Press, and it talks about this, and then Dreams of the West, put out by the Historical Society. I'm a member of the Historical Society, and they talk about over in the Snake River, the whites opened fire on the bewildered and hapless miners from the jagged rocks. The Chinese were mutilated, hacked, and stabbed with hatchets and knives. The killers robbed the miners of their money, gold. The reported amounts range from 1,000 to 500, et cetera, et cetera. The fact is, in 1880, there were 10,000 Chinese, 467 African Americans. It wasn't until the 20th century that the African American community started really growing. And that's when real discrimination, based on this great book called A Peculiar Paradise, A History of Blacks in Oregon by McLagan, really illustrates the difficult time in all sorts of areas, public accommodations, residents, et cetera. The bottom line is, Dee Dee left a great record as a great person, albeit someone with great flaws. And when he died, your initial predecessors, the Board of Trustees, had this to say: whereas it has pleased Almighty God to call from our midst the Honorable Matthew Dee Dee, who for so many years presided over the Regents of the University of Oregon, and whose devotion to the interest of this university was so manifest and so sincere. The state has lost an eminent citizen, the bench a profound jurist, society a splendid exemplar, the university and ourselves an ardent friend. President Schill mentioned how Yale and Princeton have declined to dename some of the signal buildings. Oxford also declined to take down the statue of Cecil Rhodes. Those cases, those involve pretty bad records in many ways, but they chose to maintain this. And the president of Yale, if you read the New York Review of Books recently, June 9th, 2016, Peter Salovey had this to say, and I say it in closing: to me, the principle that is most compelling is that we should attempt to confront our history in order both to learn from it and change the future. We shouldn't obscure our history or run from it. Now, finally, Dee Dee wrote, he gave many commencement addresses, and in 1879, his second one, he gave a speech called to the U of O students, To Be or to Have. And he said, whatever then you do and wherever you go, whatever you do and wherever you go, keep alive the fire which you have kindled at this altar of learning. Above all, take time to read. Cultivate the habit of reading. Make your books your companions. The society of but few people is equal to a good book. And I just think that you're faced with two names, Dee Dee and Dunn. Frederick Dunn was an illustrious professor who worked here for 40 years. And I think in your search, President Schill, for historical reference on all these people, I think the question should be asked why these buildings were named for them, you know, in fairness to them. There's an interesting book in closing called The Invisible Empire in the West by Sean Lay. And there's a chapter on the Ku Klux Klan in Eugene, Oregon. And it really does describe, I think, the period perhaps with Professor Dunn. And with that, thank you for your time. I do think, in sum, that Matthew Dee Dee was a very interesting person who grew with the times. And I think that in some ways we should be proud that one of the progenitors, one of the pioneers of this university, despite his flaws and the insensitivity in reading about slavery and participating in the Exclusion Act, which I will tell you only lasted from 1859 to 1868, May 28th, when the 14th Amendment was enacted. And it was never enforced. And I would say that the foremost living expert on Matthew Dee Dee is none other than the U of O's professor, Ralph James Mooney of law. And you might have him advise your historian panel, because no one alive has done the 3,000 letter reading and his diaries and the 350 legal cases. The guy knows what he's talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, very much.
Thank you very much, too.
And next, I think we'll turn to Jerry Rust.
Chair Lillis and board members, President Schill, I'm Jerry Rust from Mapleton, Oregon, a pioneer descendant, University of Oregon, class of 1965. When I came here in 1961, Arthur S. Fleming was the president of the University of Oregon, the great Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare in the Eisenhower administration. So that kind of dates me. I was county commissioner of Lane County for 20 years, and since I represented South Eugene, the University of Oregon was my bailiwick, and I tried to guard the interests of the University of Oregon, and I think we made some good changes. I came here to make sure that I got on the record one more time. I'm so concerned that this judge who heard hundreds of cases would get a fair judgment from today's leaders. And I plowed through his diaries, letters, biographies, speeches, and through these documents, I am totally convinced of his goodness, his evolution, and his redemption. I want to thank the President for offering up that potential criteria for redemption. I think that's very instructive. Thank you for that. He was a giant. What Madison was to the United States Constitution, Dede was to Oregon's Constitution. He codified the criminal law, the civil codes, incorporated the city of Portland, started the Portland Library, and then served the university. And so I think you would be hard-pressed to find another person at that time in Oregon's history who could be known as kind of like the father of Oregon. He set down the rules, and it was a very rough time. I was in Roseburg last week, and Judge Dede began his career in Wilbur, which is just north of Roseburg. He was there for 6 years. And I was reminded of a story. There was a lynch mob in Roseburg. He was a young man, very young at that time. The lynch mob had the rope around the guy's neck, and he waded into it, took the rope off, and said, "This man is going to get a trial. He's going to be judged fairly." So he was obviously very fearless, and I think that he hated mob rule, and he was the one guy that broke the back of the mobs in Oregon City and Portland around the Chinese issues in the 1880s. And I think that's important to know that at that time, as Scott just mentioned, there were murders. Chinese were murdered for their gold and put on boats, run out of town, and Dede assembled a grand jury and said there's an evil spirit abroad, everywhere, across this land, and we've got to stop it. And that grand jury went out and judged these people and got the leaders and stopped that ugly part of Oregon's history. So if you want redemption, you'll find it. I thank you very much for your kind patience.
Thank you, Jerry, very much. Okay, I believe that concludes everyone who has signed up, unless I missed someone, and if I did, please say so. Okay, we'll close the public comment session, and let's...
Chair Lillis?
Yes.
Would it be appropriate to offer comment from the board on some of what we've heard?
I think we've decided as a policy that we won't comment during the public comment session, so why don't we wait a bit?
Well, let me just say I was very impressed by the presentations from the students about divestment. I thought it was earnest, it was very thoughtful, well-reasoned, and I appreciated it greatly. And at some point, I would like the opportunity to respond to that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Helena, we're switching now to the year-end reports. And as the ASUO president will give that report, and it's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you all too.
You probably miss us.
Yeah, a little bit, but here I am visiting. Perfect. So I just have a little bit of a report on what we did as the ASUO this year, and then I can take questions if you have any. This year has been an exciting year, as all are, for the ASUO. We worked in coordination with the University of Oregon administration and other campus entities in order to make significant progress in what we thought were important areas on campus. After hosting a forum last fall, which I think I told you all about, in developing a more solid understanding of campus security issues, we have created a survey which will be conducted across the student population. This research seeks to identify gaps in communication between enterprise risk management as well as highlight immediate security concerns, which we think should be a part of the planning process of ERM, which is emergency risk management. Though we currently do not feel that our campus is up to date in emergency response planning, nor in providing classroom environments which are safe by means of cultural competency and inclusion, we hope to identify key factors which can be improved in one realm, while future ASUO officials can continue to work in creating a culturally competent campus community. As you all know, we were involved in the tuition setting process this year, with over 1,000 students participating in forums, outreach, signing petitions, and sharing testimony to you all and to the members of the Tuition and Fee Advisory Board. We learned that the tuition increase passed this year was not feasible to be put on the backs of students and will be damaging for incoming and continuing students alike. This campaign has continued to work to educate the entire student body on how this tuition setting process works, as well as identify what can be done in the future in order to provide more alternatives for tuition increases and how to best prepare financially for the fact that, as you and President Schill have said before, that tuition will always go up. This year has been exciting, especially for accessibility issues on campus. Recently, we saw that many folks on campus worked hard to create the Disability Studies minor, which will be first offered this upcoming fall term. Additionally, students and faculty have been in coordination with the Education School to promote Project Amplify My Professor in order to provide more accessible classrooms for students who identify as deaf or hard of hearing. Lisa Weiss, our accessibility advocate, has worked very hard with the Accessibility Student Union to create a prominent role for the ASUO in accessibility allyship and advocacy, which we thought was lacking in the past. A new phone beta app has been developed in which a group of students can identify accessible pathways and building entities on campus, as well as label the locations of gender-inclusive restrooms and other accessibility measures within this app. These updates are sent to the Infographics Lab, who in turn update the entire map on the website and then the UOregon app. And hopefully in the future, these features of labeling the map will become more accessible themselves and will be available to anyone with the UOregon app, because right now it's just in the beta process. Additionally, Lisa coordinated with Nakona and Jean from the Accessibility Student Union to bring guest speaker Rebecca Torres to campus for a discussion on spinal cord injury and overall inclusion. A new policy was written by this coalition that will go to be voted on by the students next year, which would incorporate universal design into the operating procedures of the ASUO. And finally, this group put together a flip book of accessible resources on campus and worked with the Accessibility Education Center to have this book hosted online in a format that is accessible for people who identify as being blind or low vision. Finally, we coordinated research throughout the year and paired with Roar Center to find a feasible opportunity to host a food pantry on campus in the new EMU. Right now, the closest one is at 19th and Agate, which is close to Prince Puckler's. Though this will not address the systematic problems of why students are unable to afford nutritious food, such as high tuition, high book costs, and then the high inflated rent rates near campus areas. We think this will be an opportunity to mitigate, to a certain extent, the results of this serious issue of student hunger. There have been many other successes throughout the year. We have shown up and participated in university committees. We have a larger understanding of various policies and procedures throughout this campus. And then we also have stood in solidarity with the Black Student Task Force and their demands, and then also the student-led Divest campaign that was here today. We've also been in recent conversations with the administration regarding the funding mechanisms for upcoming health and counseling center renovation projects and other future endeavors of the university. It's been exciting. We've learned a lot and have established, I think, healthy relationships with different entities on campus. We're proud of what we have done and look forward to seeing what the ASUO accomplishes this year, this upcoming year, and in years to come.
Terrific. Are there any questions for Helena?
Yeah.
Hi, Eileen. It's nice to see you again. I just wondering, you talked about the continuing effort to take a look at the tuition issue and your effort to ramp up for whatever may come in the future. So some of the other members of the board and I have been talking about trying to figure out what alternatives there are to raising the tuition, given the difficulties financially. And I wonder if your group will be at all active in trying to find alternatives. In other words, it seems to me that the 4% increase raised, if I'm reading the numbers correctly, about $16 million. 15.9, I think, was the actual number according to the documents I saw this week. So we're talking about $16 million. I mean, there's about $400 million that is raised by tuition, but the increase, I'm talking about the increase, was about $16 million. So the problem is, given, I think that what most members of the board, and forgive me if I'm incorrect about this, and feel free to speak up, but the problem is not whether it will go up, but how much it will go up, given the, so that seems to be a important part of the debate. So the question will be then how to keep it not high, and there are other ideas that President Schill and others have to try to sort of manage it. But the real problem is identifying how not to raise it as high. And I wonder if your group of students will be involved in that, are interested in being involved in that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that they want to work on. And so through this process this year, we have created like a subcommittee, which is called Students for Tuition Transparency. And so I think having them work with you all and the administration to try to identify those areas. A lot of them are active, testifying to members of the state legislature and the members of the Higher Education Coordinating Commission as well. So they're familiar with, I guess, the lack of other resources other than the tuition dependency right now. And I think that having them be involved would be good to move forward.
One quick follow-up, Chuck, and that is there any method that you can use or that you think that we should use to identify what the impact of the 4% increase is or will be on the ASUO student body? In other words, what I'm trying to find is real data of impact, given all the testimony we heard, what actually came to play.
Well, I mean, we don't have the data of like people retaining students and who comes and who goes, but that's available through, I guess, the university. But I think from the ASUO, what you can find are the students that are coming to their elected officials saying, well, this is what's happening with me and their personal stories. And so you can be in contact with the incoming executive with those, but I don't have aggregate overall information.
You said that you still are working with the Black Student Task Force. What was your, do you know what the opinion of ASUO would be on, let's say, the 3 historians that just testified about the renaming?
Yeah, so we have only stood in solidarity with them. They have been doing their own charge and their own list of demands, and we have just supported them through that process. My personal opinion, and I think I can speak for the rest of my executive team, is we are for the renaming of the buildings as demanded by the Black Student Task Force.
Elena, can you talk a little bit about ASUO's relation with Greek life and with issues like where we got some pretty unwanted publicity with Shasta? Obviously, that wasn't the first year that that's happened, so it's sort of like we got caught this year. What's ASUO's role in that?
Yeah, so we have members of fraternity and sorority life in our administration and on the Senate. I think it depends on the year. This year we were less in coordination with members of Greek life than in past years. And this upcoming year, all 3 members of the executive are in houses, and so they will probably have a closer relationship than we did. I personally, the day I saw what happened, I apologized. I took responsibility and I said that things need to be done to address what happened and then help it not happen in the future by working both with sustainability groups on campus and members of fraternity and sorority life. I think it was a shame, and I think it shows that some of our students just have a complete disregard and no respect for where they're going when they're hosting these university events. Even if they're not sponsored by the university, our name is still associated with it.
Okay. Terrific. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
See you at graduation.
I was going to say one more thing. You are graduating, so
Yes.
aren't you? Yes.
I'm running to turn in my last final right now, doing 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh, good luck.
Does that mean you're not coming back to see us?
No, I'm not.
Not that you're not coming back, but scrapping what you've contributed. Okay.
Timing is an issue.
Okay, I think we want to... Randy, this is a tough act to follow, but it's your turn. Randy Sullivan, President of the University Senate.
Oh, the lane is a tough act to follow. I'm not nearly as organized as she is. Hi, everybody. It has been my honor and pleasure to serve as president of the University Senate for the last year and vice president for the year before. During the course of these 2 years, I've had a chance to work with some amazing people, and that's, to me, was the high point of it. That includes the people sitting at this table, and it includes our esteemed president, and many faculty, administration, students, officers of administration, and classified staff. I am amazed at the dedication of all of these people and all of these groups. We fight, but we always fight over the quality of this institution. We all believe strongly in this institution. That's one of the reasons we fight so hard sometimes. If we didn't care, we wouldn't. And it's become clear to me that this university is a manifest act of collective love and passion. Love of teaching, love of learning, love directed towards our students and the world writ large. By all rights, this university, as it exists now, really shouldn't be here. A university, flagship university of this quality, this excellence, in a state which, for whatever reason, is funding at an abysmal rate. And we stick to it and we fight for making this an excellent, excellent institution, and I'm amazed how we've succeeded in that. And I'm so proud to be a member of this place. I'm not going to repeat the material from my written report. I hate reading written reports. You've got them, and it's just a brag list about all we've done this quarter, and you can put it with the brag list from the first 2 quarters. But for my year as president of the Senate, I have become aware of 6 persistent myths concerning the Senate, which need to be debunked. Thanks for the inspiration, Mike.
Copyright.
Yeah, right. And I take as my text for these 6 persistent myths saying that I think I got from someone in my family. Don't go to the hardware store for milk. The first myth is the Senate is dysfunctional. Now keep in mind the criterion by which we need to evaluate these myths is the recognition that the University Senate is a representative parliamentary body. As such, we should expect it to have the strengths and the weaknesses of a representative parliamentary body, and to behave like other representative parliamentary bodies. We could perhaps bring to mind the caning of Charles Sumner on the floor of the Senate before the Civil War. That's how parliamentary bodies behave sometimes. I could bring to mind, if you ever watch the House of Commons in Britain, that's an interesting group of people, how they do their business. Let's face it, representative parliamentary bodies can be a real pain in the butt. They can be contentious, fractious, obstreperous, and even at times collectively rude, even though the individuals in the Senate are quite nice people. Oh, and did I mention frequently collectively unwise? In fact, the only thing they've got going for them, representative parliamentary bodies, is that nobody has ever come up with a better way of defending the public interest in public institutions, or for that matter, for maintaining academic quality in universities. So if we want to obtain those two goals, we have to accept that the Senate functions as a representative parliamentary body. Myth number 2, the Senate spends too much time on non-academic issues. Now my brag list. Academic issues for this year: changes to the summer term calendar, important discussions with the President and Provost over the President's 3 goals, the academic plan, and the realignment process. An intense group of IT security policies that a group of senators and faculty and staff worked on and came up with a great group of policies that came to. The ideal framework, discussion of the ideal framework for diversity. A course repeat policy that was badly needed. 2 new program approvals. Revision of the policy on posthumous degrees. An important discussion on the impact of accelerated learning programs. A policy on our first policy dealing with academic quality of online and hybrid courses. An important discussion on the new mandatory live-in policy for freshmen. 2 other policies that were very important, again, marks of collaboration and a new model of collaboration between the administration and the Senate in streamlined working groups. Revision of academic rank policy and the revision of the sabbatical leave policies. We passed an important policy on the scheduling of midterm examinations, and another important policy on course overlap between different programs. Now, this is not even mentioning a big batch that we did on the policy rollover. I'm not even going to go through the list here. Now, I would mention that many of these actually didn't take much time. And they didn't take much time because the senators and the administrators did their homework. Many of these policies were simple, all in favor say aye, aye, and everybody says aye. Not because there were no-brainers, but because everybody did the work on them beforehand and looked at them beforehand. We did talk about some non-academic issues. We talked about non-academic issues when we felt they really impacted the quality of life or the academic or the campus community in a broader way, in an important way. And we had some very important and sometimes heartrending discussions and motions about that. But we did serious core academic work, and that's what we're here for. Myth number 3, the Senate is not representative. Sometimes the fairly low turnout rate, whatever you want to call it, the amount of people that vote on it, is cited. I'll put it up against any off-year election in the state. Yet when a state representative is elected in an off-year election, nobody questions the mandate. Let's face it, democracy is the rule of the concerned. The unconcerned usually don't vote. So the Senate is representative as a representative parliamentary institution. Myth number 4, constituents don't want to serve on the Senate because it's too contentious. Well, there is a kernel of truth to that. Because as we've said, parliamentary institutions can be contentious, and not everybody wants to do that. Quite frankly, if somebody walked up to me and said, hey, Randy, everybody, it's on a wild fluke, everybody wrote you in as senator for Oregon on an election year, I would say, no, thank you. I don't need that in my life. So a lot of people don't. And not everybody's cut out for it. It is politics. Politics is not a four-letter word. Not everybody wants to do it. But that does not impugn the legitimacy of the body. Number 5, it's not like this at other institutions. I meet with my colleagues from the other public universities and the Interinstitutional Faculty Senate, and I have met several times with my colleagues from other Pac-12 senates. And yes, it is like this at other institutions. In fact, the degree to which it's like this at other institutions is frequently proportional to the degree to which the Senate is empowered. Number 6, the administration should not interfere with Senate affairs. This is a very pernicious myth. Can you imagine going to the governor of our state or the president of our country and saying, oh, by the way, don't talk to anybody in the Congress or the legislature about your programs, and if there's any committees, certainly don't talk to any of the committee members and try to reason with them and coordinate with them, because that violates separation of powers. That's not what separation of powers is. In fact, separation, the better that the executive, in our case the administrative, and the legislative or the Senate branch understand the constitutional separation of powers and agree on it, the greater cooperation we can have. And I'm happy to say that our President, Mike Schill, has has been very active in engaging with the Senate. It's taking a while to percolate down through Johnson Hall, but I think that's going to be changing now, and I look to a new era of collaboration and cooperation. And I can attribute a lot of the good feelings that are beginning to happen between the Senate and the administration to Mike. So let's work together to debunk these myths, criticize the Senate, but let's always do it in the context of the recognition of the Senate's validity and the essential role that it plays in the governance of our beloved university. Thank you. And have a great summer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Same to you. And good luck.
Is there a question for Randy? We've fallen dreadfully behind schedule.
Oh, I'm sorry. I would have
Oh,
talked
no,
quick.
not
I would have
because
talked
of
quicker.
you. It wasn't you.
Yeah.
It was us at lunch or something, but.
No, we had a short lunch. It wasn't lunch.
She's not taking the blame.
Okay, it was me on the agenda. All right, thanks, Randy, very
Thank
much.
you. Yeah.
President Schill, you're next.
All right, so first I'd like to thank you, Randy, and thank you for your service this year. As I said to you at the last Senate meeting, we obviously disagree over some things, including some of your myths, but nonetheless, I can't imagine anyone with a more open heart and really wanting to do good for the university. I just can't imagine anyone with more of that will and desire and commitment. So we all very much appreciate everything that you've done this year. Thank you. And I also want to thank Helena, who isn't here to hear it because she's taking her final exam, and of course, she's going to graduate in 4 years, and we're very happy about that. So we don't want to interrupt.
And we applauded that she was leaving.
And we were right. So, and now becoming an alumna. So I'm going to keep my remarks fairly short, and maybe even shorter than I was anticipating, since you all heard I had a lot of microphone time yesterday. I just want to say, Chuck, it really was an honor to receive the mace and the medallion from you yesterday. Thank you for not choking me, and also thank you for not hitting me on the head with the mace. I found the past 11 months of my tenure here to be enormously satisfying, and I've cherished getting to know each of you over the past 11 months, and really 13 months given that I got to know you earlier, and I'm really looking forward to the next several years of getting to know you all better and better and better, and all the wonderful things that we're going to do for this university. Now, yesterday I pretty much talked about my aspirations for the school, and I talked about some of the challenges that we face. Finances will be a major challenge, access, success, diversity, all big challenges. How do we enhance our research enterprise? How do we rebalance our faculty? How do we make an impact on the state? Today, what I want to do is give you just a sense of what I think over my first 11 months are some of our milestones and some of the things that we've been able to accomplish. And when I say we, I really mean we. This is a joint effort. This is a joint effort of you. This is a joint effort of the administrators in Johnson Hall, of the Senate, of the faculty, of our students in some cases, of our alumni. So, I mean, and I don't just mean that just sort of pro forma. I mean, everything we do is really the culmination of a lot of people. So we had a really good year in hiring faculty this year. We've expanded our diversity, as I mentioned earlier. We're hoping when the dust clears, believe it or not, people don't let us know everything, where they're going to be next year. We hope to be up about net new 20 new faculty members over our replacement this year, which puts us on track with where we'd like to be. And, you know, as Scott and Brad will discuss with you, you know, we plan continued and focused hiring. One of our clusters is virtually done. I think we're looking for maybe one more person, and that's the obesity cluster. But we have more going on. You'll hear about that later. We hired 3 new vice presidents this year. We have 3 new great deans who are going to all be coming in, and that will usher in a period of leadership stability, because it's very, very difficult. As all of you know, it's very difficult to make plans and to fundraise when you don't have someone who you know is going to be there the next year. And so that is very, very important. We admitted, as Scott talked about, we admitted in funding an additional 60 graduate students, which is incredibly important for a research institution. As Jamie said, we found an additional $3 million of recurring costs that we were able to save and invest in faculty hiring, IT, and other needed investments. As she discussed, it wasn't an easy process, but it was necessary, and I'm not apologetic about it. I think this is something the university needs to do. As I sort of said by a little bit of not planning, you know, we hired an AVP for student success, which will be announced shortly. And it's a very, very important position for us. It's key to our $17 million commitment to increasing our graduation rate and our student success. We established a really much better Title IX investigatory and accountability program. When I came in here, you know, if you were to read the newspaper, you would think that's what the school was all about, which was sexual violence. And I think we have worked with the faculty, we've worked with our administrators, and we've established a system which I would put up against any school system for dealing with those issues. Does that mean we'll never have another incident? No, it actually means we're going to probably have a lot more reporting than we had in the past. This is a problem at every university, but I think we are now getting to the point where we have a very good system in place. One of the things I worried about when I came in was I said, oh my God, we've got labor contracts that are all going to be up. And right at the beginning of my tenure, well, we settled our contracts with SEIU and United Academics, and we did that with minimal friction. And that was important because it was very important for the university to come together and for us to move forward. So I'm really very pleased with that. And then we also finalized our strategic plan, our strategic framework, and we, in addition to, as you heard today, we finalized our ideal plan for diversity, inclusion. And that's really very important too. Lastly, we've improved the tone, I think, and reduced the tension of interactions between Johnson Hall and the Senate and just all of the groups on campus. This year, I think all of us recognize, I wasn't here last year, but just reading the press, the temperatures were quite high in a number of instances. This year, I think people have a much better feeling and much better attitude, and so I'm really, really pleased with that. I want to thank three of our interim deans or officers who have really done a terrific job. Brooke Muller at AAA, Julianne Newton in journalism, and Brad Shelton, our interim VPRI. They're all going to stay part of our community. Indeed, Brad is, where's Brad? I saw Brad a moment ago. There's Brad. He's actually the happiest person about Brad moving. The happiest person about Brad is Jamie, about our hiring David Conover, is that Brad can go back to working with Jamie and Scott and me on a number of very, very important budgetary initiatives that we need to accomplish. We hired, as all of you know, David Conover, who will be here this summer as our VPRI, Juan Carlos Mileta, who's our new journalism dean, Christoph Linder, our new AAA dean, and of course, Andrew Marcus has moved from interim dean of CAS to permanent dean. So I'm really, really very excited about that, and I know you're all going to be really excited to meet these folks when they come on this summer. We still have challenges in additional deans. We have our business school dean is not yet set. We are still in the process of searching, and we will find out, in the not too distant future where that's going to go. And then in addition, next year we'll begin a new search for our law dean. So I've also started, as some of you noticed or may have noticed, something called Open Mic, and I don't take credit for that. It's Jennifer Winters, who's not here right now, but she gets credit. Oh, there she is. She gets credit with that title, and that is, I sort of feel the need every now and then to talk. Well, I always find the need to talk, but I don't find there's a lot of people listening when I want to talk sometimes, because it happens between 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock at night. And so what I've started to do is write some columns that we're putting out, and it's still a work in process. The last column, Kyle's not letting me send out because it's like 5,000 words, so we're going to edit that down, right, Connie? The smaller is better, so we're going to work on that. But we did send one out, and that was about leadership. And I think that's a really important point, and I think that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit at tomorrow's training, and it's something that is very, very important, and that is our leadership styles, right, and how we move forward. And I think one of the things that we've had at the school is a lot of leadership churn, and we've had a hard time moving forward with that leadership churn. Well, and as we've not had stable leadership, we've seen informal forms of leadership, and many of them were very welcome because we needed that during a period when president after president, and during a period when we were getting our sea legs. But I'm really looking forward to, and I'm sure you are too, of moving into a more stable environment where we'll always be uniquely Oregon, but where we can move into a model of governance which looks more like best practices at many universities. And I think we've really started that, and we really are getting into a pattern. And that leadership is going to look, I hope, a little bit more like this. So I think that, and I talked a little bit about this in my open mic, the board will provide oversight and strategic direction for the university. President, provost, other administrators will run the day-to-day operations of the universities, work with internal and external constituencies to make the decisions, to push forward the objectives of the board and the objectives of the university, and make this university one of the preeminent research universities in the country. The Senate will play a pivotal role as the guardian of our academic mission, and that includes new degrees, the selection and tenure of faculty, the creation and revision of curriculum, the establishment of requirements for graduation. In other words, academic matters as generally understood. And the provost and I will, importantly, here's what I think we've been missing, and where we really are going to do well to have permanent deans in place, is the provost and I will set budgets and direction, but the leadership of the university, the academic parts of the university, will largely take place in our schools and not in Johnson Hall. What we want is, we want to have empowered deans who are going to do wonderful things, come up with great new programs, hire fabulous new faculty, and we want to be facilitators of that. I'm sure you want to be facilitators. I want to be, Scott wants to be facilitators of that great activity. But most good things in academic institutions bubble up from the faculty to the deans and then to the university, less so top down. Some good things come top down when they cross over school boundaries. But generally what we really want is the schools to be the generators and the leaders. And I'm really excited about that. And I think we're right at the cusp of moving into that. And that's a very, very exciting moment for us. And I think the less that we do in Johnson Hall in terms of prescription, the more we're all going to be happy around this table and throughout the university. Now, let me tell you one last thing before I stop, and that is, I know all of you are dying to hear a little bit about our fundraising, a very, very important topic, particularly given our conversation today and yesterday about state funding and about student tuition. So far to date, we have 1 month to go. Our fiscal 2016 totals are $157 million. And of that, just to give you a sense of what our yearly totals have been, 107 million, 110 million, 200 million, 115 million, and 215 million in that order. One of the things that I think has been remarkable, and Mike Andreessen and you all deserve tremendous credit, is during a period of leadership transition, there's actually empirical studies written about this, schools take immense hits on their campaigns because it's all about relationship building. You go back to square one with the president each time you get a new president. So we've been back to square one twice. And so we these numbers are really wonderful, wonderful numbers. Now, as of April 30th, approximately 80% of this year's giving is academic in nature, for academic purposes. Last year's percentage was 76%, and our overall campaign totals are 60% academic. 33% of our gift total in the campaign is earmarked for endowment. 26% of the gift total is planned or deferred gifts, and that's a cumulative number. We have had over 97,000 donors so far in the campaign. But here's an interesting number. Probably not quite typical, but not fabulously unusual. 2.8% of the donors have contributed 92% of the total. These campaign pyramids are very, very top heavy. But that doesn't mean that the donors at the bottom of the pyramid aren't important, because the donors at the bottom of the pyramid will one day be the 2.8% on top. And we got to get more and more and more of them engaged. And I'm also pleased to announce that we are, as of today, at $985 million in the campaign. We are working extraordinarily hard. Mike is working Why are you sitting there? You should be out there working. But in the next 30 days, we're beating every drum and every alumnus, actually, over the head, and we're trying to get to $1 billion by the end of the fiscal year, which, of course, will be halfway through the campaign.
There's an exit fee to get out of this room.
There's an exit fee. Okay, yeah, so it's going to be $1 million each. But in any event, in conclusion, I just want to say thank you to everybody. I've felt throughout this year supported, challenged in all the good ways by you, by the students, by the faculty. I'm inspired to be the leader here. I'm looking forward to the future. I think this is a marvelous university. Our best days are ahead. I don't want to sound like a Hallmark card, but it's really, I really have great enthusiasm. So thank you all.
Terrific. We're not going to spend time talking about, but as all of you know, we've started the process of Mike's annual review. And I think we tried to practice this last year, change the goals, Mike, but we tried to practice it, and I think we're getting better at it. But at any rate, we're underway. All of you aware of that, and thanks for a great first year, Michael.
Thank you.
We'll be more official in our review, but
Can I add one very important technical thing?
yes, of course.
So you are all on the recipient list for the open mic updates, and there is an opt-out option. You are not allowed to click the opt-out option. I will just keep signing you back up.
Even if I win with Kyle to make it the 5,000 board one.
Okay, we're going to change the order of business a bit. We're going to move this motions and resolutions back to the end because we do not want to miss the foundation again. I took some heat from pushing them off in the past. So, Paul, let's move to your presentation. Are you going to bring Jay up there with you, or is he going to hide behind you?
Jay's going to come up with the really tough questions.
Okay.
No, this is actually very nice, and thank you for giving me, as the president of the foundation, the opportunity to talk to the governing board. Believe it or not, very few people ever ask what we do, and when I try to explain it to them, their eyes glaze over and they lose interest because they want to know how the campaign's doing, and when we explain that we don't do fundraising, all the fundraising is actually done within the university, people get a little bit mystified by what we actually do and more mystified by how we could be, frankly, so excited about what we do. So I'm going to really break it down into 3 components for you, and I'll move through this fairly quickly, and please feel free to ask any questions. So our primary purpose of the foundation, primary activities are receiving, managing, and distributing gifts on behalf of donors to the university. So when it comes to receiving a gift, the foundation will never receive a gift that isn't approved by the university. Every gift we get is in collaboration with a donor, with the development officer, with the university, for a specific purpose at the university. Once we receive that gift, once it comes to the foundation, it actually legally transfers to us from the donor and obviously does not go to the university. So it's very important that we articulate the language and work with the donor and work with the university to make sure that language is correct and specific in exactly what the donor wants. So we now become the representative for the donor. And somebody calling me? No? So we're the representative for the donor, and we actually take that very seriously. And we talk about, we use our language of donor intent, and we're the fiduciary and all those fancy things. But really, we consider it a promise. There was a promise made between the university and the donor that funds were going to be used in a specific way. So we receive that money, and we manage it accordingly all the way through the process. So the second portion of the 3 is that we manage the funds. Currently, the foundation manages over $1 billion in assets. It's roughly $1.1 million or $1.1 billion. But for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to focus on the endowment. We have about $750 million in the endowment. And Jay, the person back here, is the wizard behind all this, that over the last 10 years, if you look at performance based on Cambridge. Cambridge is a consulting company that works with 200+ foundations, endowments around the country, and measures their performance. The foundation has been in the top 5% for 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, and 10% returns. I mean, that's truly remarkable for when we're talking about being compared to the Harvards and the Stanfords and the Yales and the very, very large foundations and endowments. I think it's important to note that if you look at that 10-year performance, because we look at everything in very, very long term, that 10-year performance number is just shy of 7%. That, in today's world, is not terrible, of course, but let's remember that we're spending 5% of that every year. So we're really leaving 2% for inflation for that endowment to grow. And I think that the really remarkable number in that, I mean, it's certainly remarkable to be in the top 5%, but it's remarkable when we took a step back and looked at what would that number be, or what would the endowment be if we just hit the median, if we hit what we'll just call it a benchmark of a typical 60-40, public equity bond performance, and we measure ourselves against that. That's roughly 5%. So if you take that over the course of the last 10 years, we have $90 million more in the endowment today than we would have had we just had median performance. $3.6 million additional funds to the university per year. So we take that seriously. Jay does get the credit. We have a lot of people who work in that department. We have a wonderful investment committee who focus on this, and they all look at it in the same way that this is where people's eyes start to glaze over, so I apologize right now. We think in terms of intergenerational equity, and it's a term that's used in the endowment world, that we need to make decisions today that are appropriate for this generation but do not cost a future generation, because we believe our stakeholders are not only the people here today, but the people who frankly haven't been born yet. And President Schill made some comments the other day at a retirement party about universities living forever, and we actually believe this will live forever. So we're protecting the future in the decisions that we make, not only in how we invest, but how we distribute the funds. And so the final bucket, I would say, is just the distribution of gifts. And this is where it gets really mind-boggling, because if you think in terms of what President Schill just said, there have been 90-some thousand gifts in this campaign. We get 50-some thousand per year. We have 3,000 or 4,000 accounts within the foundation that can be spent. So each time somebody on campus needs money or wants money, they come to us with a request, and we have people and some systems, but mostly people, who will look at that request and make sure that it honors the donor intent, that that money is going to be used for the right purpose. And it's a tedious process, I think, for some, and it's annoying for others, but it's incredibly important for us that we honor that commitment from start to finish. We've worked very closely with the university, with Jamie, with Scott, with Mike Andreasen over the last few years, because we also feel like that distribution of funds that we used to believe that our discharge, our responsibility was discharged at the point of making the funds available. We have taken a more firm position that our responsibility goes a step further into making sure that money's spent. So there can be times where funds don't get spent, but working with Scott, with Jamie, and with Mike Andreasen, we've actually gotten very, very good at that, of highlighting areas where funds may not be spent. So that's the quick 3 buckets of what we do. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Paul, can you talk a bit about how you're structured and managed? You have a board, you have an investment advisory committee. I think this is particularly relevant because Jay, leading the investing side, has had such good economic return performance, and he has some good advisors, and you have an effective board, and I think it'd be helpful to just remind all of us of that.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we do have a very effective board. So just to give a little bit of background on that, I think it was in the early 90s, there was an issue with Portland State and between the foundation and the university that resulted in then Attorney General Dave Fromeyer separating foundations from universities. So public universities in the state of Oregon have to have an independent foundation. So as a result of that, we have a board of 28 trustees, literally from all over the world, who come together 3 times a year, and they are the true fiduciaries. They're the overseers of the process, the policy. Within that, we have a variety of committees. The one that Chuck mentioned is our investment committee, and these are very experienced, very well-rounded people in the investment world and the business world and the financial world who really sort of vet ideas from a variety of different directions. So it's a wonderful governance model, and it's working very, very effectively.
Yes, Ann.
Congratulations first on the return on the investments for the foundation. One of the trustees, your trustees, told me yesterday that another way of looking at the success is that last year, as I understand it, I hope I'm recalling this correctly, the foundation, the University of Oregon Foundation, can boast that it was second only to Princeton in the success of its investments. He was quite happy about that, and so if that's true, congratulations.
Yeah, last year was an incredible year. Jay could probably give us the specifics, but it was a remarkable year.
The question I'd like to ask is about whether or not, we heard some testimony today from some young people who made a bit of a noise, and we don't know how much more noise they're going to make about their concern about our investment as a university in fossil fuels. I'm wondering what you can say about how important our investment in fossil fuels might be to our success rate, and if that's something you can talk about. And also, I'd like to know, if possible, what the decision-making process would be. Who makes the decision in terms of if the university were to decide not to invest in fossil fuels? Would that be you? Would that be President Schill? Who is the person who would have that power?
Well, I'll start with the governance model, and it would not be me. But it would not be him either.
Okay.
Neither one of us would make that decision. That would be a board decision, and it would be primarily driven by our investment committee through the board. So to answer your question about divest, and everybody's read, divest is a very hot topic on campus. I believe it was UMass just said they're divesting. If you look at the last 2 university foundations that divested, both UMass and I believe the other one was Syracuse, if you read the language, it says nothing. That they really aren't divesting. They're saying that they intend to, that they won't direct invest. We've worked very, very closely with the students over the last 3 or 4 years talking about these issues, and we, as investors, have not invested in coal in a decade plus. We just don't. It's not a good investment, but Stanford takes credit for divesting of coal. We have 1% of our endowment that's related to carbon-based investments, and we have 6% that's related to alternative energy. So we actually believe that the future is alternative energy. I believe that it's been 3 years since we've had an investment in carbon-based anything. So we're not investing currently in carbon-based fuel, carbon-based anything. But the language of divest gets to be so restricted that we don't ever want to put ourselves in a position where we would be liars. So we're not investing in those right now. We do have some investments. They're in sophisticated investment vehicles that will take years to get out of, or years to mature, and to get out of them now would be incredibly expensive. So we're in alignment with many of the things the students are saying. We certainly recognize that climate change is a very important issue for this world, and I think that the folks around our office are looking forward to the day when there are cool driverless electric cars roaming around and nobody has a car. So
Go Tesla. Right.
Just to follow on that and to add something that
A little closer to your mic.
I'm sorry. To follow on and add something that has made me really proud of the foundation. that I learned, I think about 2 years ago, and I wish the foundation would be more public about this piece, but there is a push for university foundations and other pensions, other large bodies of money, to engage in environmental investing. So rather than divesting, which has various difficult economic consequences, investing, looking at choices about whether to invest or choose not to invest, based on environmental, social, and governance factors, but particularly environmental factors. And our foundation, if I'm correct about this, had the first ESG, environmental, social, governance investing policy in the Pac-12, which I think is pretty incredible. And it's interesting that the success in investment has gone with that. There has been a view that an ESG policy would result in reduced returns, and in fact, that's not correct, certainly for our foundation, that it results in better returns for the very obvious reasons that coal isn't a good investment, and some of those alternative energy sources are good investments, and so using that information is a better way to do it, and it is. And then my question, but I think you already answered it, is that my understanding is that the very small percentage of fossil fuels that we have is locked up in investment vehicles that would be very difficult. We don't have any direct investments.
We don't have any direct investments.
And I noticed the student, I wrote it down, the student, and I haven't looked at the UMass divestment yet.
But Susan, let me explain. That's based on my idea, my impression of what a direct investment is. I'm not really sure what I know what that means.
Well, I just wrote down what the student said, and the student said they pledged to sell all direct investments, which I think is very different from what we have. And I want to go back and look at the UMass, whatever they said they're doing. But I think the other thing that I've been impressed with our foundation about is I think a lot of schools are making public statements, something like that, that suggests that they're doing a lot more than they're actually doing. I think we have done a lot more than we have said that we're doing. So I would encourage you to be more public about all of the environmentally appropriate investing that we've been doing actually for several years.
In fact, it's just not only great to have that communication, excuse me, Chuck, for jumping in, but it was just a topic she was mentioning, so I was responding to it, to communicate that to the students, but actually, given our universities is seen increasingly nationally as a place where sustainable design, sustainable thinking is really one of the maverick ideas that we have a special, that we promote with a kind of special ability. I think that it's all it's all linked, and if there was a way for us to be thoughtful about not tooting our own horn, but allowing, as we're talking about being seen differently by the nation and the world, to understand this is really part of the core thinking, even from the days when I was here, which was ages ago. The ideas about the environment have really, a lot of them have come out of the Pacific Northwest, and that's part of our heritage, and to sort of be able to be on the right side of history, given that climate change is not just a humanitarian issue, it is probably the greatest humanitarian, is going to be one of the greatest humanitarian crises of our time, if not the greatest humanitarian crisis of our time. And while it may not happen as much here in the Pacific Northwest, it will be in the world. And to be on the right side of history would be important, and to understand our role as a school that has, for a long time, been on the right side of it. I think it'd be great for you to talk about how you have been on the right side of it, if there was a way for that to happen.
Yeah, like I said, when I started here, we're always appreciative of the opportunity to talk about what we do, because we're not in a place where we really can or should say what we do. I mean, we're here to support the University of Oregon, but I would like to make one comment about sustainability, and sustainability gets used a lot, but I think we're the epitome of sustainability. We are designed to last forever as an entity, as the foundation and the university, so we have to be thinking in those terms of funding forever. And to say we're divesting actually takes away from sustainability, if you know what I mean. It's complicated, but it's just to say that, because it's a possible limiter for the future of the institution. And not that we even want to, as I said before, 3 years since we've invested in any carbon-based company or entity.
Any other questions for Paul?
Chuck, quick one. Hi, Paul.
Hey, neighbor.
And yay for the, Weinhold was in the news today with 4 goals for the lacrosse
Oh, really?
team.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, you read
Cool.
the paper.
I was at the golf tournament. I missed my son's lacrosse game, and I missed something else in the afternoon. I can't remember what it was.
First things first.
I'm not sure who's going to forgive me first, Mike or Griffin.
You're forgiven from me.
Thank you.
A quick comment about the notion of fundraising. You alluded to Michael Andreessen, and yes, there's different reporting structures, and the onus of fundraising is within the university, but I think that we need to be really aware of who the trustees for the foundation are and how important they are, not only as funders, but the advocacy and the advancement that that group of people have, as well as how passionate they care about this sort of work that we're doing. In fact, sometimes they're tempted to come over and want this trustee title. And when this group was named as trustees, I know there was some pushback from U of O saying, no, we've already got a group of trustees. One of the things, though, I think that's happened is that it's said yes, and the foundation has their trustees, so it has helped to make that distinction. But I would, I think another social event or shoulder rubbing or whatever, if we can sometime get, I know it would kill you, but to get some meeting times on campus when trustees of the foundation are also here, it's really an important group. They're on lots of advisory committees. They're just critical. So it's another elevated profile, I think, that would be really important to have.
I would love it. I'll send them my open mics and other people that set to read.
I think one thing that is for us to remember, when we look at comparable schools, say sophisticated state universities, for us to be competitive in terms of endowment, we kind of have to get in the $2 billion range. I used to know these numbers, but I think the University of Washington's at $3 billion or something. So it isn't that we have to get to the 40 billion, but right. For the stability financially that this kind of institution requires, we kind of have to get to the $2 billion range. Mm-hmm. So,
did you hear that, Mike?
Mike?
He's getting shorter back there.
Mike doesn't have time to have dinner. Okay, well, no other questions. Thank you.
One more, if I could.
Yep, you bet. Sure.
Just to follow on what Ann and Susan have been talking about, Paul, on the divestment issue. I'm very pleased to hear what you had to say about how things are going. I do think, though, there is a public relations problem that the University of Oregon Foundation has on this issue, and certainly with the student groups who we heard from today. And I think it would be very helpful if you could produce something in the way of a formal report that would say, you know, here's how we are protecting the university's future and the Earth's future by where we are investing, the fact that we really haven't been investing in fossil resources over a certain period of time, and to give people a sense of what the costs might be of trying to break up the complex investments that you do have, and how that would harm the university. I think it would be very helpful towards bridging the gap that clearly is there, and I know it would be helpful for many people to hear something about that. So I think something proactive in that direction would be helpful, because I know there's been some extreme flashpoints between the students groups and the foundation over this.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for Paul? Thank you. Jay, good to see you. Look over there. I'm sorry. Where is she? She's hiding, Victoria. Thank you. I still don't see her. Oh, there she is. Okay. All right, let's go to the clusters of excellence discussion. Oh, you've already taken your place. Thanks, Scott.
So Brad and I want to give you a quick update. You saw in your packets some of the descriptions of the Cluster of Excellence Hiring Initiative, and we just want to run through historically how we got here and how we're doing. So the first question is why we initiated cluster hiring in the first place. And as you remember, what we looked at was how can we be distinctive, really have a national or international reputation fairly quickly by growing the faculty. Because a normal faculty hiring process takes a long time and tends toward the replacement of the people who are already here, not necessarily moving into new directions. So our idea was to hire into small clusters that allowed us to realize a fairly significant growth. This was in chunks of 5, 6, 7 faculty at a time. And our intent was to grow quickly in focused areas. As it turns out, it wasn't as quick as we had hoped, but the whole idea was take outstanding tenure-related faculty and put them in specifically designated high-performing areas that would enhance our institutional metrics. So that's things like grant dollars, publications, citations, national awards and memberships, discoveries. The areas where we thought we could do much better than we were doing, but we were already poised. So those that were sort of near the top, how do we really get into the top? We wanted to provide greater opportunities for diversity hires among tenure-related faculty in general, women in sciences, and people of color across all disciplines. And we wanted to expand the University of Oregon's footprint in translational pipeline to address grand challenges. So because we don't have medicine, we don't have public health, we don't have agriculture, we don't have engineering, we've lacked the ability to really move in that translational pipeline to actually make the basic science discoveries applicable to new businesses and to new products. So the existing clusters, and they're enumerated in your packets. Here's a list of them. I won't go over them. We had a fairly elaborate process where 3 different groups on campus. One of them was the Dean's Council, what was under a different name at that time. One was an elected faculty advisory committee, and the other was a research advisory board. All of them rated the 34 different proposals. These were the 10 that emerged on the top. And within that, once we got to that point and picked 10, that was right as we were launching the public phase of our campaign. And then we focused on having these be put in front of donors. Philanthropic support was very important. The health promotion, obesity prevention, and human development, as you well know, was funded through philanthropic support. We decided we needed to launch the others, at least in part, with institutional support, that they wouldn't then still be eligible for philanthropic support, but we wanted to at least first authorize the beginning hires in these. And those 3 that we selected through another negotiation with faculty and getting input, genomic function, and one in basically sustainable materials, and then the most recent this year, which we hope to begin hiring 2 positions in the biological side of neurons to minds. And in addition, and maybe Brad can speak to this, we realized that there were other central facilities and ways that we research that all these clusters were going to be dependent upon. And so our most recent gift from Tim and Mary Boyle provides some financial support for core research facilities, aquatic animal care services, all the zebrafish and other stuff that we've been dependent on federal money for, but at some point they stopped giving, and we need to have endowments to support that. Genomics and cell characterization core facility, and the imaging core, which is new. The state funds we use to leverage these with philanthropic and institutional funds. Klamath Hall and Onyx will have research spaces that want to increase the functionality and add lab space for the new hires that will be coming in.
I think we've said this to you 10 times in the past. You cannot recruit top-line scientists unless you have the facilities that they need. The word facility here does not mean building. It means what you put in the building. So we have to have a top-notch sequencing facility, cell characterization facility. We need to have an imaging facility where we have the very best microscopes that can be shared by various scientists. We have some very good facilities now. They are expensive to run. The gift from the Boyles is a really wonderful gift. It's going to allow us to keep our genomics facility, our sequencing facility up to date. It's going to allow us to build out the space for an imaging facility that we desperately need, and it will help support the basic operations of our zebrafish facility, which is really one of the best zebrafish facilities in the world. So we're very, very happy to have that. We've also talked earlier today about the high performance computing. This is another facility that we must have, or we will not be able to bring in the scientists that we want to bring in. So we have been putting that together too. And as we discussed earlier today, we have hopes to make that facility even stronger, larger, faster.
So we want to update you on the status of the hires. So in the energy and sustainable materials, we have 3 positions authorized, and we have 2 active offers out and in negotiation. One of the challenges in this area is that this is in the space of engineering schools for the most part, and so not having the structure to place somebody who's a chemical engineer or a certain kind of characteristics that they would get in a department or an institute that in an engineering school makes it a little bit of a challenge. So even though we might have good synergies with groups of faculty, that's been more of a challenge for this particular hire than we had hoped. We've had some really very high-profile people who are very interested in us. So far, we have not landed anybody, but we have a couple of active offers out right at the moment.
I'd like to point out that both of the offers made in this area were to women.
Yeah. Center for Genome Functions, we searched for 1 position this year and had a very successful hire, and you'll see a picture of that individual later in the presentation. So the plan was to hire 1 to begin with, and we now have moved into the search. The search calendar for faculty hires, particularly tenure-related hires, is about a year long. You start about now. You form the job description in the search committees. The various professional meetings are at different times during the year. You need to hit that cycle right. There's a kind of cultivating the pool. You often do some outreach to make sure you get the right people in the pool. Then you have campus visits. And in these science areas, there's often another 2 or 3 visits back. If there's a partner hire that's involved, which happened a lot with our science hires this year, you bring them into campus, and then they have to meet the relevant department. And then they come check out the facilities. So maybe we're looking at 2 people at once. They have to work with their respective departments to identify the space on campus, what kind of facilities they need. So it's a lengthy process. Often takes a year and a half to hire the best people. Health promotion, obesity prevention, and human development. We are now looking at 5 positions, actually perhaps potentially 6. What we did was we hired 3, and what we did in the process of those hires, we identified a 4th candidate, African-American woman who did research on African-American populations that we felt would really be an ideal complement. So we actually made 4 offers at once. Very rare would all 4 get accepted. All 4 got accepted. So that's the kind of, on the edge of it where we wanted to be. And you'll see in a minute, those folks have come to campus just this spring.
I have a little good news story I'd like to throw in here since we're talking about this cluster, which is centered in the Prevention Sciences Institute. I learned earlier today that Professor Leslie Lev of the College of Education was just elected president of the Society for Prevention Research.
That's great. Wonderful. Cool.
And then finally, the newest cluster hire to make the list of approved hires is Neurons to Minds. What happened with this hire is 2 of our founding faculty left to go to the University of Chicago, and they were psychologists, so they were more on the behavioral side. And we have a biological side and a behavioral side for this. But one of our lead faculty members, Chris Doe, Howard Hughes, a fellow and a very accomplished biologist. We're working with him, and we are now authorizing for 1 to 2 hires next year. What we find with these hires, if you allow the possibility of hiring more than 1, then you not only open up the possibility of having partners, but you also kind of create a cohort effect where you have people coming in at the same time, which is very exciting to them because they can play off of each other. So those ads are being drawn up, and we are going out on the market to hire in that area. So here's a picture of the first 4 hires in the health promotion obesity prevention. And Jeff McKnight, the genomics hire, who's coming from the Hutch, the Fred Hutchison Cancer Research Center up in the Seattle area. So questions? We think it's going well, and we realize that the timing of these takes a while, but by academic standards, this is lightning speed.
I'm not sure how to ask this question, but can you comment on what it is about how you manage, or someone manages the clusters that makes a cluster more impactful than just a collection of very skilled faculty? I mean, how is the world, what do we do that the world is different because we have this, my new favorite term, knowledge community that we call a cluster? Why is it, how is it different? What do we do that makes it better than 3 new skilled faculty members?
So I'd have to say that cluster hires have been executed at different campuses over the last couple of decades at least, with some mixed results. So I don't think there's a formula that works necessarily, and there is something sort of inductive and processual about the fact that putting really bright people together allows them to create something new. So one answer is we're not sure what the outcome is going to be, but you have to trust the best scientists to be at the cutting edge, to be able to forge some of those things. What we're creating, though, is a different funding mechanism, a somewhat different reporting mechanism, where we change the mix of people who are overseeing it. So typically it's departments and deans who are controlling all the purse strings, and provosts eventually, but it's more at the local level. We're pulling that up to the provost level and saying this aggregation is worthy of this kind of investment. So we're going to, in some ways, bypass some of the departmental authority over what new labs get built, or what new facilities, or what new structures, reporting structures that we build in terms of departments or institutes. Institutes are the way we've traditionally done it, and we've been pretty successful here. So this is a variation on that theme, I would say.
It is a variation on the theme of institutes and centers. I would say that the success of the clusters to be more than the sum of their parts sits squarely on the shoulders of the leaders of each cluster. Of course, those leaders then need the support from central administration to be able to actually carry out that mission, but I believe we're in a good position to give them that support. I also believe strongly that the clusters that we chose were chosen very much because of the leaders who were suggesting the particular focus at that time. This wasn't just good science. In every case, this was an example of good leadership at the same time, and I feel very good about that. One thing I would point out is if you look across the clusters that we have, funded or partly funded, with one exception, all of the leaders are still here. And this has been a volatile time. People have been coming and going within the institution, in case you hadn't noticed. So I think that really speaks well that we have kept those leaders on board, and they're all very, very much engaged.
So one of the things that has made this work so far is that the research office and Moira Kilty, the chief of staff for Brad as VPRI, has really, they're very good at setting up structures for funding and for of following the federal regulations and things like that, and building clusters. We are developing the sort of financial backdrop so that we can track the money and put it in the right places of the people who need to use it in a timely fashion. And we weren't sure when we started whether this would live in the provost's office, the vice president for research office. Right now, the heavy lifting's been done for the vice president for research. Dave Conover, who's coming in, fully supportive of this and knows some models for that, having worked at NSF and other places. We'll eventually have a funding structure where if people leave, that money gets recycled into the new cluster ideas. We'll have to figure out now in the coming years. So we had 10 of them we selected. As we move into, maybe we have funded half of them. Do we refresh and have another competition? Do we try to fund all 10? You know, what do we do when we look at our resources? Some of them are more expensive than the others. We started with some of the most expensive on the list. And I think that's probably a good choice at this point. Some of the others, we need a big gift or some institutional resources to make them come to fruition. But we feel pretty good about where we are. Yeah, Mary.
In trying to define these clusters, because I've actually been trying to think this through myself, is it that the interdisciplinary nature allows some freedom and flexibility and so forth that can be a strategic advantage over other universities in ways that would just launch us to a different level? Is there somewhat of that going on? Or does, I mean, I understand interdisciplinary work goes on in institutes and centers anyway, but the clusters in more of a strategic fashion or not?
Yes, so all of these are interdisciplinary. So for instance, in the health promotion one, we hired in what is sort of applied public health prevention science, which itself is interdisciplinary. But the two hires that will be the complement to that, the last two hires, one will be in the biology department and one will be in the human physiology department. So never before would those entities be talking to each other.
Right.
So by scripting it that way, you know, hopefully it will give a strategic advantage over psychology departments or biology departments who have a more narrow lens. But other universities have other cross-disciplinary research units, so we're not alone in this.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I understand there are other centers and institutes that are interdisciplinary and that these are all inter and cross-disciplinary, but the way they are put together and the way that, does it allow for some strategic advantages in being able to work more closely together or outside the rubric of traditional departments and so forth, or not?
Why do they work?
So each one is a little different, and so we didn't say these are the you know, scientific challenges or the societal issues that we want to fix. We just said write us a proposal. So they're homegrown in that sense, and so they're so different from each other. A couple of these are very narrowly within one discipline. The volcanology or genome function, although that's chemistry and biology, are pretty focused. I mean, it's a fairly narrow range. Others are taking people from kind of, you know, far different sides of campus, so it's hard to generalize. I don't know, Brad.
Tani, I think you had a question to me.
Yeah, it feels like we have an opportunity here, given that there is no sort of right way and wrong way to do these clusters. It feels a little passive in terms of U of O's approach. I mean, U of O said, we want to prioritize this, and some of our early money, let's do clusters. And I'm not feeling a lot of sort of research to impact need here from the administration to be able to say, well, we're going to let the clusters decide what they want to do. Obviously, it needs to be homegrown, and they need to decide their approach and how it works. But I guess I would like to hear a little bit more expectation from the university, because this is special. It could differentiate us. If it is true that we want to see research to impact, to make a difference in the world as a result of it, I mean, it's something unique we're doing. So my feedback is, I am not feeling that direction from the university, and I don't want to put words in your mouth if that intention is not there, but that's a little bit how it felt to me. And if you have no intention, it's still all good, because we've hired wonderful people who will do wonderful work. But wow, wouldn't it be great if we could ask for a little bit more direction? So,
Scott, could I just say something? So, one of the things I've learned from having been dean for 11 years, and is that it's very hard to go top down with regard to faculty, because it's sort of and this is a variant of what I said a moment ago, things bubble up. And so what you want is things to happen organically from the faculty and not to happen top down. I mean, top down can create the sort of the environment where people will work together, where they have the resources to work together, where we put the right people in the rooms, but ultimately where ideas will generate is when they're here and they're talking with each other and they're having lunch with each other, and all of a sudden they go, wow, I see that. Let's do an article together. Or I see this, let's do an article together. But when they're separate, it's not going to happen. And even though we say we want it to happen, it won't necessarily happen. So I think that what we can do, so that's why you're hearing a little bit, you called it passivity. I sort of call it sort of, we're trying not to be too directive, because that's the worst thing one can do, because it's got, and it isn't a rebelliousness that they don't want to do it. It's just, it's not how research works, right? Research works by people organically coming together and coming up with brilliant ideas. And so I think what we can do as an institution is, number one, fund them in terms of their positions, fund them in terms of the sorts of resources, the facilities, the toys inside, we won't call them toys, but give them the things that they need to use to do their research, and then maybe create some social engineering around lunches and ways to bring the folks together. It's part of what we did in obesity, right? We got everybody together before they came here. So, and they started talking about ideas. And that's how things are gonna, to my mind, that's how things are gonna, that's how I've seen research grow up. I don't know, Scott, Brad, what do you think?
Yeah, and one of the things that we had initially conceived of was the initial hire in these clusters might be a senior person, a full tenured professor who's at the top of their game. It turns out we're not very good at recruiting those folks. Mostly they are incredibly expensive. The Stanfords and the Harvards and the MITs of the world do much better at recruiting them, and they cherry pick and they pay really high dollar. We're better at hiring people at mid-career or beginning, but that also puts us on a longer time frame. It's sustainable because hopefully you do well and you get the best people and they create something new, but it takes a while for it to come to fruition.
I just want to clarify. I don't want to communicate that the university needs to be punitive and directive and saying you will do this. You would be there to say, we have high expectations. It isn't, you messed with the homegrown aspect a little bit in that the university said, out of everything we want to get money for, this is the most important thing. So it can't just be let's bubble it up. It's really special, right? So I guess all I'm saying is I think the university could show excitement and support and some high expectations and marketing support is we're going to help tell the world about what you're doing. I mean, I'm trying to think of the positive ways to have high expectations for the clusters, not in a punitive sense. Totally agree. It shouldn't be directive, squashing them down in any means. So
right, and I think that's true.
I'm saying it in a supportive, high expectation, come on, man, you're going to make us special.
I think certainly for the one cluster that we're almost finished selecting, they all know that, right? I mean, I don't normally have lunch with faculty members before they even arrive, and I've had lunch with them, so they know we're with them. And I think they also know that there's resources there to help them with seed money and things like that. And that's really what's going to pull them together and go there. But I agree with you. I mean, and I think that, we're going to show that for each of these clusters. And, one of the interesting things is just as an aside, we were talking, this relates to a number of things. So the initial model, I think, was, and I wasn't here, but the initial model, I think, was that we would use philanthropy for each of these clusters. And what we ended up doing was, we didn't. We ended up starting some of these with institutional money. What we may try to do is, and this is a little harder to do in terms of fundraising, but it's important. We couldn't wait, right? We wanted to say, let's get going. Let's start hiring these people. Let's not wait for the typical fundraising cycle. But now what we're going to try to do ultimately, and what we should be doing, is trying to say to people, please donate money to fund these clusters so then we can take our resources and move to another cluster that hasn't yet gotten a gift. So that's going to be, that is a strategy that we're going to use, because, you know, we're not in the privileged position that we can just wait for the right donor to come. We need to kickstart. And that's what we did with Neurons to Minds. That's what we did with the genome function. That's what we did with material science one, right?
Another example, just if I may just, is, as some of you know, I love the volcanology one. In fact, I think I sent a copy to you, Connie, because I thought it was very well written, the one. And one of the things that was intriguing there was, my memory isn't perfect, but they would not have hired on their own, even given 5 new positions, a big data analyst that focused in geothermal energy. That wouldn't have made their cut. But because they have a view of how to move their department to top 5 in the world, and they know that one thing that's really going to help them is if they have that big data person, they structured their proposal so that they when they're going to go out and get somebody that they normally wouldn't get. Well, I think that's kind of an interesting idea. The other one is, in kind of pushing on them, they believe they will have funding adequate to participate in this international, in a leading way, in an international conference to be held in Portland. And we, in the spirit of that, ask our federal relations people to talk to our members of Congress to help us get institutions, think of the power companies and, you know, wood products, to get them to participate and position ourselves as the host of that meeting. Well, that takes a little bit of money, it takes a lot of political work, but those are the kinds of sort of things that, in using Connie's term, sort of suggest some passion, like, you know, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it better than anybody's done it, and don't get in the way. I mean, I think that's great spirit. So that's just an example. So my original question, I'm sorry that I cut in here, but my original question is, do we think of managing that effort in a systematic way that aims at those real ahas, that we really are different? I mean, that's the question. Are we happy with how we're managing it to achieve that world-class performance?
So can I answer?
Sure, absolutely.
After today's...
All we know are the questions, not the answers.
So certainly after today we are.
You're going to be here for a while, I can tell.
I'd like to say that I think we already are. It's not exactly in our DNA. So when something's not in your DNA and you've got to learn how to do it, it takes a while.
That's not exactly the Oregon way, but...
It's not exactly the Oregon way. It is difficult. It is difficult for us to toot our own horn. That's not in our culture. We get there.
Great. Okay, Anne, you had a question, I bet.
Well, I was just thinking, jumping off of what Connie and also now what you said, Chuck, maybe it would help us if we, since we don't have the opportunity to sort of see what their proposals were that so impressed you that made you decide that these were the candidates that you wanted to choose. Is there something that we can learn about, maybe perhaps one of the questions that they want to address, or any, I mean, have any of the applicants talked about any specific question that they wanted to research that could be transformative, or is yes?
We're happy to share all the proposals with you. That's not a problem.
You have short summaries in your packet for this meeting.
I didn't read them. Okay, good.
And they vary in terms of whether they're trying to be problem-focused versus basic science-focused. And so some of Connie's comments make me think, too, we don't yet have the mechanism for taking the more basic science one more toward an application. And that's, I think, where another way, besides championing them and just talking about how we're going to really solve some interesting puzzles, how is that going to change the world? How is that going to translate into projects or something that will actually address something real? Because some of them are pitched at a very different level from each other. And I think that's where they'll need help. I mean, because it's a different set of people to build the labs or to build the, prototyping or whatever it is when we have to get to the next point. So.
Wouldn't be bad to have resources at the administrative level or wherever they live, somebody or a group that helps each cluster toot their own horn, that lifts them up, because they're down, they're doing the work. Somebody's got to be up here saying, how does this help U of O's reputation? How does the world get better? And it's a lot of marketing. Yeah. It's marketing the great work that's being done. It's talking about it. It's connecting them with industry. And I don't know how much you can expect each cluster to do on their own, or if there needs to be help. I don't know. Yeah.
No, and certainly our communications people are talking to them. They love these, but we need to give them a little more airtime.
A little oomph.
Yes, Susan.
And if I can add, I'm not sure that this adds, but I'll say it anyway. One of the things, one of the things I'm always impressed by about academia, and this goes beyond the clusters themselves, is that faculty do this work because of the passion, and there are probably exceptions to that, but most people are excited about whatever it is that they're doing. And so the bubbling up works because faculty would be doing something else if they didn't care a lot about whatever it is that they're working on. And so all of these good ideas bubble up in different ways, and even outside the clusters, for those of us who work outside the clusters, there are a lot of good ideas. And so as we're thinking about ways of telling the world about all of the good work, thinking about that broadly, I think, is important. And the communications department has been doing a lot more of that in the last, I don't know, year or so, of getting the stories out about just some amazing things that when I hear about what some of my colleagues across campus are doing that I was completely unaware of, it's pretty amazing. So yes, bubbling up works. Yes, we could do more communicating, and there's just lots of good work going on.
And part of what we're doing here is really changing the culture and inspiring people to kind of think outside the box a little bit. So there was a cluster that predated these 10. The math department and the biology department came to the Dean of Arts and Sciences and said, look, we don't have statistics and we think bioinformatics are important, so we'll put up a line and we'll put up a line if you'll put up a line, and we'll hire some people together. It turns out we didn't hire anybody that year, and now we've done 3 years of that. This year we weren't hiring because we didn't have it quite figured right, and somebody came out of a different pool who fit this profile exactly, and so we hired him. He's going to be a superstar. Cool. And so we have a couple more hires to do to fill that out, and that might turn into a bioinformatics unit or an applied data science unit or something that might reorganize. And then we had one of the failed applications in environmental humanities that didn't make the cut. It frankly wasn't a great proposal, but the people are fantastic. And because they wrote the proposal together, they started meeting together. And now they're being funded by one of the colleges to develop a program that is going to be probably, because it's in our DNA, be one of the best in the nation. So it's part of the thinking about this. So part of it is our control and part of it is our directing resources, but part of it is just kind of letting faculty know, if you do this together, there will be support coming from different parts of the university.
Any other questions for Scott or Brad? Great work, guys.
Thanks.
Keep after it. Thank you. So we're going to go back now and take care of the resolutions and motions. We don't have any motions or resolutions coming out of the Executive and Audit Committee, but the Executive and Audit Committee did review and approve the audit plan for 16-17. And importantly, the Executive and Audit Committee did listen to a good review of the status of the IT work that's been going on, which we've all been involved in, and I think almost all of us heard that. So that's my committee report, and I'll turn to you next.
Okay, the Finance and Facilities Committee, in addition to getting our normal finance and treasury update, we considered 3 motions and took action on each of them. They're listed in the agenda for the full board meeting. Quick summary on each. The first is the approval of the 2016-2017 expenditures, both the operating budget as well as capital expenditures. The second was...
we may need to do these in separate resolutions. This separate vote, it came as a seconded motion, right?
Yeah.
So should we vote on that, or should we do them all together? Let's do them one at a time, okay?
Okay.
So the first one was the expenditure authorization in your book, and the committee brings it to the board as a seconded motion, so we just need to take a vote on it. And
Can you just tell us which resolution this is? Just which resolution is this one?
The resolution itself is page 19 of 48 in your full board meeting packet.
It authorizes the expenditures for next year.
Okay.
So we should do this, we can do it by voice vote probably. All those in favor of the resolution as reflected in the material, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay, second one.
The second one, as it's listed on the board agenda, is actually on page 11 of 48 in the board book. And this is the naming of two new facilities. The first one is the new facility that will be built to house the Oregon Bach Festival, and it's largely being funded by a very generous gift from Andy and Phyllis Berwick, and the proposal is to name it Berwick Hall, I think quite appropriately. The second one is the renovation of the track facility, and it is not going to involve a renaming of Hayward Field. Hayward Field will still be Hayward Field, but with the expansion of the facility, the building of new resources over there, it's proposed to call the new facility the Bowerman Track and Field Complex. And those were approved by the committee with no dissent and come to the board as a seconded motion.
Okay, so we'll just do a voice vote on those. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
And the last one is a proposal that we considered to a new contract with IMG College LLC, which has been our vendor for multimedia licensing in the athletic department. And we had a 10-year contract that had 2 years to run. We decided to re-engage in renegotiating that and extending that. We reached an agreement. We benchmarked what we were targeting out of this agreement against an evaluation being done by an independent party. They told us what we should be able to achieve. Rob Mullins did a great presentation and communicated to us that we were able to achieve what we thought we should be able to get out of it. The minimum revenue that we'll achieve over the 6-year term of the contract is $57 million, and then we have some revenue sharing that could be on top of that. So, so this being over a $5 million contract requires approval of the committee and the board. Again, there was no dissent in the committee meeting. It comes to us as a seconded motion. So.
I have one question. I just have one question. So I heard you to say that we would benefit by at least $57 million over the course of 6 years. Is there any cost to the university to enter into this contract?
What was the question?
Is there any cost to the university to enter the contract?
I don't believe, I think that's a net number.
Gain. There's no cost. Okay.
And this is an extension with some modification of an existing contract, so, and it did receive complete legal review by our people. Kevin, we asked you earlier.
Yes, my office worked on writing the contract with IMG's counsel as well, and no, there's no cost to the university. It is net gain to us.
When we, just as an information item, when we see contracts related to something like athletics, as an example, I think it's important for us to ask the question, I certainly did ask this question, of just assure me that there is no financial risk, or there's at least a known, we know if there's a financial risk to the university. Let's just be sure of that before we bring it to the board, and that, I think that's a reasonable test, and Kevin assured us that that was the case. So this has come with, as a seconded motion. I think we can do this by voice vote. All those in favor of supporting it? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And I think the last thing we want to do, unless someone corrects me, which routinely happens, but is, Mary, do you want to give a brief report on? Okay.
We have no formal actions coming from the Academic Student Affairs Committee, but we did have 3 excellent presentations and discussions. The first on the ombudsman position, and we have interim ombudsman person, Jennifer Reynolds, who did an excellent job telling us what she has done since she stepped in and talking about the search for the new ombudsman person who will be coming forward, and just what an important position that is and what an important program that is for the university. The second presentation was exceedingly important for us because it was Dean Scott Pratt of the graduate school, and really enlightening us on what is going on in the graduate school and how beneficial that is to the university and how essential it is for a research university. And the third piece is part of our new DNA, and that was the initiative on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And not only President Schill, but Vice President Yvette Alex Asenso gave us a really good feel for how the university is responding to the Black Student Task Force requests, the progress being made, steps being taken, and the ideal framework that has been developed and the work being done on that. So I think no controversial actions of any kind, but just some really good information to
important topic.
help us. Exactly.
Okay, any other business for us before we, I think next is the tour of the remodeled EMC, right?
Yes, EMU. So
EMU.
So after the chairman adjourns us, you can take a couple minutes to go to the restroom or whatever. You can leave your stuff here. Amanda will be in the room the whole time. We'll come back here before, where the shuttle will pick you up, et cetera. So please be relatively brief in any transition time, and then we will gather by the hearth, and Vice President Holmes will lead the group to the EMU, which I think you'll be very, impressed with the facility. And Colas Construction can point out what it did for us.
And just confirm, the training tomorrow isn't here?
It is not.
It is not.
It is. We'll give you instructions. It's next door. It's not.
No.
Oh, it's in the building.
It's the arena.
Okay.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor, aye. Good meeting, you guys. Got a lot done. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't think we were going to fall on the table.